Greetings goers of YouTube, just call me Dr. Storm. Yes, I know it's been a while since someone with style treated YouTube to a Hazbin Hotel review. Wait, no, please don't click off. I don't actually think that highly of myself, I just couldn't think of a better opener outside of Quoting Stayed Gone, okay? Out of all seriousness though, it has been a hot minute since I've actually talked about this show on my channel, so let me just tell you how this video is going to play out before we actually jump into the season. While the animation, voice acting, and music of Hazbin Hotel are probably better this season than they were the last, this review is primarily going to be focusing on the show's writing, which is not only the foundation that all the aesthetics are built upon, but is also of significantly less quality than those features. You can polish a turd as much as you want, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be a turd. I'll be going through the plot of each episode in chronological order, analyzing things along the way, and making commentary about things I like or dislike, which won't necessarily be restricted to the show's writing. Also, this review is going to assume that you've at least seen Season 1 of Hazbin Hotel, or at least know what happens in it. So if you clicked on this video without ever having watched it for some reason and you'd like some context, either go watch the first season, watch the recap song they had Alastor sing, or just watch my own videos on Season 1 linked in the description below. Though be warned that I made those videos back in my YouTube channel's infancy where I didn't really know what I was doing yet.
This is stupid. This is entirely fucking stupid. It is genuinely some of the shittiest fucking world building I have ever seen in any modern show, and I have no goddamn clue how the flying fuck any of this got through to the final draft.
But if you're still too lazy to do any of those, the TLDR is that Hazbin Hotel is an animated musical series about the Princess of Hell, Charlie Morningstar, trying to run a hotel that rehabilitates sinners. Well, that's what it's about in theory, but we'll get into that. I thought Season 1 was pretty bad in terms of writing, as there were too many characters and too many events shoved into a measly 8 episodes, making everything feel rushed and half-baked. And the world building of the Hellaverse between this show and its sister series Hell of a Boss is completely sloppy at this point. Okay, seriously, am I the only one who just hates the fact that this universe is called the Hellaverse? Like, is that really the best name we could come up with? I feel like that blue-haired bitch from Life is Strange every time I say it.
Hella stupid usually.
As you could probably tell from the title and thumbnail of this video, I don't think Season 2 is very good. But the real question isn't, is Season 2 bad? It's how bad is Season 2 and why? So to answer that, let's start at the very first ring of hell and work our way down.
The princess is now a permanent guest at one of my 7 Koopa hotels.
The Season 2 premiere starts 1 month after the last season's finale, with the hotel actually being packed with guests for once. We see the main cast in the lobby together and learn that Vaggie is attempting to change her name in order to carve a new identity for herself since it was Adam who originally named her. Yeah, considering how little care they put into Vaggie last season, I'm not surprised that this is going to be the big overarching plotline for her this season. We see that Charlie is still mourning the loss of Sir Pentious, but she still tries to remain positive as she greets the new guests at the hotel, including a mad scientist based off of an anglerfish named Baxter. Charlie calls Baxter New Pentious to cope with Pentious' death, which is a joke that the writers thought was so funny that they repeated it near the end of the episode and even titled the episode after it. This isn't even the worst joke in the episode, by the way. They actually have a running joke about this extra wanting to kill his wife that they try to tell 5 different times for some reason.
Is it true this hotel is recruiting a hellish army? And should I divorce my wife? And should I kill my wife? I killed my wife, and I regret killing my wife. Hey, did you hear I killed my wife?
I get it!
Charlie shows Baxter around and tries to raise everybody's spirits, and the opening musical number for the season has been guaranteed. Several sinners leave out of boredom in the middle of the song, and Vox engages one of them to start a different number within the number Trust Us, in which the V's get their use out of the sinner as a star before tossing her back out into the streets once she's outlived her usefulness. While I do prefer this to Happy Day in Hell from Season 1, it's mostly just because of the V's part, which is way better than Charlie's part and is just something different that you don't typically see in opening musical numbers. Well, that and Happy Day has that one part I hate in Cannibal Town where the song just changes completely for no reason before just going back to what it was less than a minute before.
Oh shit, oh my gosh, why?
But you know, they're really doing a lot of juxtaposition between the Hazbin Hotel and the V's here, like they're really setting up both organizations to clash this season. And with the hotel actually having a significant number of guests now, there are actually more stakes about it being targeted or endangered. Man, I really can't wait to see what Viv has in store for the hotel over the next 8 episodes.
I have a bad feeling about this.
Well, unfortunately, it turns out that many of these new guests aren't at the hotel for redemption, but instead are here to learn how to kill angels, since the hotel crew were the ones to fight them off back in Season 1. Lucifer helps Charlie escape from the madness in the lobby, and they have a heartfelt talk where they reminisce about Lilith. By the way, this is the only nice scene that Lucifer and Charlie have for the rest of the season. Somehow they had better material together with fucking Mimsy ruining everything.
Yes, it's me.
Shut up, bitch!
Charlie calls her mom, only for it to go to voicemail like always, and she returns to the lobby to tell everyone that she's only going to try and redeem them and not teach them how to actually fight angels. As expected, almost every sinner leaves, and the hotel is pretty much in the same state it was in for much of Season 1, only Penchas has now been swapped out with Baxter, who stays because he's genuinely interested to study redemption, thinking it impossible. So pretty much everything that's happened so far was basically pointless. Oh, what a great use of our time. That's not to say that nothing is happening in this episode, however, as the B-plot follows Vox as he schemes to use the hotel for his own gain and pitches a plan to the other Vs to take over heaven as gods. So yeah, Vox is technically the big bad of the season.
The big bad! Oh my god, so fucking evil! Oh my god!
When I first saw confirmation that Vox was going to be the main villain of Season 2, I was honestly more confused than anything. He was barely a character in Season 1, and his only real contributions to the plot were giving Sir Penchas a reason to stay at the hotel, and... Actually, no, that's his only contribution to the plot in Season 1. He has a battle over the airwaves with Alastor in Episode 2, which doesn't really go anywhere. He appears for a split second during Poison in Episode 4. He's shown to be watching the battle in the finale, just commenting on it with the other Vs, and not even on a TV broadcast. And he and the other Vs have a verse in the final musical number, despite the fact that they didn't really do much in the season. It's just weird that after Velvette confronts Carmilla at the Overlord meeting, the Vs then proceed to do nothing for 6 months before stepping up to conquer another realm in this season. You could argue that Vox viewing the final battle a month ago helped him confirm how angels could be killed, thus he never tried making plans before then. But like, Vox never tried to spy on Carmilla or send a mole into her business after Velvette all but confirmed she had something to do with an angel being killed. He sent Penchas to spy on the Hazbin Hotel immediately just because Alastor was crashing there.
Velvette, you can't just fuck with Carmilla Carmine in front of other overlords. It makes business harder.
What? This was 6 months ago. Why are you just now telling her not to do this? And she actually got a lead on some pretty important information for you, yet you apparently just sat in your fuck-ass chair drinking your coffee for half a year. Not to mention, it didn't really seem like the other overlords really cared all that much, honestly.
Safe travels back to the nursing home, fuckers. What the hell? We literally just got here.
Just watching the new season of Hazbin Hotel, and you know, I gotta say, that giant dinosaur lady, oh my god. Oh, I wish that she could crush me and call me a bad dino.
Ew. No. And Valentino, you cannot keep hitting angel dust in public.
When have I ever hit him? You're obsessed with me.
Right, so after we treated Angel Dust SA pretty seriously last season, portraying it as something horrific that no one would ever want to go through and not pulling any punches with it, now we're just making a funny montage of Valentino hitting him as a joke for how he was lying about how often he does it in public. I know it's meant to be at Valentino's expense, but it's still just pretty jarring considering what we had to see last season. I mean, sure, the one moment with Penchas at the club clashed with the SA themes too, but at least that was actually a funny payoff to a recurring joke that didn't involve Angel suffering.
Because I'm having sex with everyone here!
Vox explains he wants to rule heaven since it will give him a high he only ever experienced when he was a cult leader as a human, and he gets the other Vs on board with his plan through the number Once We Get Up There. I actually like the song quite a lot, especially since it's the first proper song the Vs have without needing to share with or butt in on anybody else. It does a good job setting up the V's motivations as villains this season, and the way the music changes key to become more evil sounding on the final note as the imagery mirrors Be Prepared from The Lion King is just such a banger way to end a villain song. Vox shouting "they're fucked" at the very end kind of ruins it, but, you know, not enough that I can't appreciate the ending as a whole. Vox then starts running a smear campaign on Charlie to draw the people who left the hotel over to him. Oh yeah, and Vaggie says that she'll take on more of the hotel while Charlie gets her feelings in order, and Emily opens a portal to tell Charlie that Penchas is in heaven and that redemption is real, and the episode ends. Overall, I thought this was a pretty mid-premiere for the season. The Vs were alright, but Charlie's portion kinda felt like a waste of time.
Oh my, you were Jock the Ripper!
Episode 2 begins with Sir Penchas in heaven being held on trial by the angels. With Emily insisting that Penchas has been redeemed, Sarah being skeptical of the idea, Lute wanting to kill him, and a new character, Abel, son of Adam.
Oh, I get it now! That is so clever! Like a serpent. Adorable.
Just existing. Suddenly, another new character appears who calls herself the Speaker of God. Apparently, this is the closest representation we'll see of God in the show, as Vizzy Pop feels God is too ethereal and beyond comprehension for her to ever fully depict him. Which is honestly kind of surprising to me. With even the angels swearing, I figured they could just do something like on Family Guy where Seth MacFarlane just uses his Carter Pewterschmidt voice.
Hey, do atheists go to hell?
No.
How about people who say they are not religious, but they are spiritual?
Straight to hell, to the boiler room of hell, all the way down.
Oh yeah, and the Speaker of God is just another anthropomorphic bird for no reason other than the fact that this is a Vizzy Pop show. The Speaker asks Sir Pentious to tell a story, and we get a look back at him when he was a human in the Victoria era of London. Okay, so I know I just gave Viv shit for the Speaker's design, but I don't really think her art style works very well for humans. It's clear she's more used to drawing non-human characters, and at least in the older episodes of Hell of a Boss, some of the human designs don't really look like they come from the same show as one another. Anyway, Pentious reveals that he was once an introverted inventor who liked to watch people walk by his window, when one night he saw someone kill a young woman, seeing his face and identifying him as a client. The killer is implied to be Jack the Ripper, and after Pentious didn't report him to the police out of fear for his own life, the killer got 5 more women, which led to Pentious carrying immense guilt to his grave that landed him in hell. He then tells the Speaker about his intended airship sacrifice for his friends in the Season 1 finale, and Sarah concludes that he was in fact redeemed for his sin. When this episode first premiered, there was much debate on social media about whether or not Pentious should have been sent to hell for his life as a human. On the one hand, it does make sense that his inaction would have been seen as cowardice, leading to the loss of human lives that could have been saved. But on the other hand, Pentious confirms that the client had a great deal of power and could have easily ended Pentious' own life had he reported him to the cops, especially if he already knew him. Considering that hundreds of potential suspects for Jack the Ripper were observed up until today, and considering Pentious only had witness testimony and not any actual evidence to back himself up, I'm personally a bit more on the side that he shouldn't have gone to hell, since it's likely the Ripper could have gotten away anyway, just with Pentious being another meaningless death. But that isn't really the issue I take with Pentious' backstory in the grand scheme of things. The main problem I have with Pentious' life as a human is that it just feels too easy for the narrative. Something that people may often forget when watching this show is that the characters are, by definition, not supposed to be good people. They got sent to hell. And to help the characters and the audience both believe in and be in favor of Pentious' redemption, despite him being a mad inventor who engaged in violent turf wars, the sin that landed him in hell in the first place is something much more reasonable or understandable to many people. It was done less out of malice and more out of fear despite technically being selfish. And despite this never coming up in the first season, Pentious is breaking into tears and talking about how guilty he is even now over it.
I carried that guilt to my grave, and I ended up in hell, and I deserved it.
I understand that Sir Pentious is the very first redemption we see in this show, and that if he did something much more severe in his life, his redemption at the end of Season 1 would be much harder to buy. But this just feels like kiddie mode, like something you see in VeggieTales despite this being an adult animated series. They could have had Pentious and the Angels not know exactly what redeemed him by this point, and maybe they would have to explore it together for a season, and it could also give us an opportunity to understand Heaven's culture better. But no, Pentious has to be heavily woobified, and not God has to say that he's good, which means Sarah, despite being against redemption the last season and being against it at the start of this episode, is now on board with the concept 5 minutes into her screen time this season. Yeah, I don't really know that I care for the Speaker of God character. Like, I know God is all-knowing and all-powerful and that we were going to eventually have some representation of him in the show at some point, but it just feels like she's only here this season to make sure Sarah turns by this episode. After one more scene in this episode, she's basically on an extended coffee break for the rest of the season. Lud objects to the Speaker and Sarah, reminding them of what sinners and demons are to them, but they're not really swayed by her. Nobody besides Lud even seems to care that it was Adam who Pentious was trying to attack in his sacrifice, or even that he was killed by demons. Not even Adam's own fucking son seems to give a shit.
Hi, hello. Abel here, son of Adam, rest in peace. As much as I'd like to honor my dearly departed dad,
I know the show is mainly about hell and not heaven, but heaven is still an important place with important characters in this universe. We don't know much about heaven past the surface level of people being nice and happy, and the show's only spent one episode here before this. They especially don't have the luxury here to just speed things up like this. Lilith is seen somewhere in heaven ignoring Charlie's calls and just letting her phone go to voicemail. And this is also the last time we see her this entire season, so why did we tease her at the end of the last season again? Well, whatever. Emily shows Pentious around heaven, but when Pentious asks to see his friends again, Emily tells him that he can't because...
I don't think you can. This doesn't happen. That's why it's so special, and you're so special!
Just because. Yeah, so this is one of the biggest issues with the plot in Season 2. Pentious being able to return to hell so that sinners can firsthand see the success of redemption would certainly accelerate things in Charlie's favor. But the story they want to tell this season has to see Charlie fail and Vox succeed at this point, so we can't really let Pentious be seen by hell at this point either. The writer's solution to this dilemma is to simply try and patch up this wound with a band-aid by having Emily say,
I forgot to mention, you're not able to leave?
Which is just incredibly vague and could mean any number of things. When she says he's not able to leave, does that mean there are laws against it, even if he's just down there for 5 minutes? Is there some supernatural force keeping him in heaven? Do the portals the angels make somehow only let angels through? We see Charlie go through one later, so that can't be the case. And for all Sarah and Emily knew at the beginning of episode 6 last season, Vaggie was just a regular sinner accompanying Charlie, and they still thought nothing of her coming up there. This is a world existing between 2 different shows. You need to be building it. It's not even just me pointing this out, by the way. This whole Penchas can't return to hell thing is the one plot hole, contrivance, whatever you want to call it, brought up the most frequently this season. And it's especially distracting when him being shown in heaven is later treated by the show itself as a valid way to stop Vox's plans. Emily, Abel, and Peter, who I guess has someone else guarding the gate, then start the number Like You, where they try to show Penchas how great heaven is while he very clearly just wants to go back to hell. The Heaven song last season was one of the weakest ones, and the same is true for the Heaven song this season, even if it is better. Penchas trying to unalive alive himself near the end is pretty funny though. Meanwhile, Sarah is discussing the exterminations with the speaker, and we then get another song already, that being Sarah's confession. That's the actual title of the song, by the way. I'm not just describing what's happening in it. The song's still pretty good, honestly. Patina Miller as Sarah and Liz Calloway as the speaker harmonize really well together. And the speaker doesn't simply answer Sarah's questions and instead tells her that she has to figure out on her own how she should atone for the exterminations and move forward from them. I still think it's a bit weird that the speaker showed up to offer guidance when one sinner got into heaven, but doesn't feel the need to offer more when a literal war is breaking out later this season, but at least she's not just solving everyone's problems in the story, I guess? Sarah eventually decides to put heaven in lockdown, putting incoming souls through tighter security and making sure no one gets in or out. This ends up largely feeling pointless, since angels only really went down to hell in the first place for the exterminations, which Sarah is stopping anyway, and there are angels still going down to hell during the rest of the season a couple times, including Sarah herself. Also, Sarah said she's prohibiting angels from visiting any other realms. What other realms even exist for angels to go outside of heaven, hell, and earth? Like, why use that specific wordage? Lute has a C-plot this episode where she starts hallucinating that Adam is talking to her, showing that she's grown more unstable from the events of Season 1. And she makes plans to take revenge on Charlie by killing Vaggie, which she professes through the song Gravity. The song's just a banger and it's easily one of the best of the season. It's the one I've undoubtedly listened to the most, and it does a solid job at setting up Lute's motivations and actions that she's definitely going to carry out later this season.
I have a bad feeling about this.
Oh, and also this is a lyric in the song.
Storm's coming, I can see the clouds.
So, you know, I just find that lyric really neat for some reason. Emily gives Penchas new egg boys and sets him up with a new room, which still doesn't quite make him feel better. Upon hearing Sarah announce the lockdown, Emily makes a portal to inform Charlie what she told her at the end of episode 1 before the lockdown starts and the episode ends. The episode was okay, and I did like the dynamic between Penchas and Emily, though this version of Heaven still just doesn't interest me. It just feels like there's more we could be doing with it.
It is becoming more insufferable!
Episode 3 picks up exactly where episode 1 left off at, and Charlie excitedly tells everyone else what Emily told her about redemption being possible and Penchas being up in heaven. Charlie's spirits don't remain up for long, however, as she sees that Vox is continuing his smear campaign against her in the hotel. But seeing as how Charlie has never been one to let people bashing her ideas get in the way of her efforts and has always been highly appreciative to have any guests at the hotel at all, obviously she just ignores Vox and attempts to learn how Penchas was redeemed so that she can try and redeem other sinners, and maybe also use Alastor to broadcast something against Vox's rhetoric if it really becomes that big of. Or she just invites Vox directly into the hotel without any evidence for redemption and without knowing how Penchas was redeemed. Yeah, it's already pretty obvious that the writers want something bad to happen this episode and don't care how it happens. Meanwhile, Cherry, Husk, and Angel discuss Penchas being up in heaven, and it becomes clear that Cherry really does miss him. Cherry goes to Baxter to learn more about Penchas, since Husk said he mentioned they worked together in the past, and she discovers that Baxter is actually an employee for VoxTech and was once Penchas' lab partner. Baxter was a bioengineer and Penchas a laboring engineer, and despite Baxter having his creations considered superior, Penchas found Baxter's experiments too cruel, so he took the Egg Boys and parted ways with him. We also learn from this flashback that it was actually Baxter who created the Egg Boys, and that Penchas was apparently obsessed with Cherry Bomb around this time and left to engage in turf war specifically with her. After Cherry learns all this, we get a love duet between Penchas in heaven and Cherry in hell titled Piss. It's just piss. Yeah, the song doesn't really work all that well since the romance between Penchas and Cherry Bomb is already really underdeveloped. Like, Penchas just starts crushing on Cherry right when she appears in season 1, despite the two apparently having a long-standing rivalry with one another. You can't really have this lovers to enemies arc when we never even got to see them as enemies. And no, giving us a flashback of them being enemies in a song where they're already longing for one another doesn't count. Also, despite Vizipop saying that the pilot is spiritually canon, whatever that means, I don't know that I can really count their scuffle scene in it as development for the actual show. They threw Cherry into season 1 when there were only 3 episodes left, so there wasn't much time to actually do anything with her, and they just kinda went the easy route and teased the Cherry Snake ship for fan service. But even with Cherry being in season 2 from the start, the writers still don't know what to do with her, and now she's more or less just Pench's girlfriend and sometimes Angel Dust's homie. But you know, not the first time a female character gets sidelined or only exists to prop up a male character in the Helliverse. Well, with the B-plot out of the way, Charlie goes to let Vox and Velvette in, and wait, there's still just dozens of sinners walking around here? Bitch, fuck what Vox is saying, you have actual people here now, go fucking redeem them before telling shit to the news. Well anyway, Alastor is also in the lobby, but fucks off immediately once Vox is let in. I forgot to mention this earlier, but Alastor in the first episode has been acting pissy ever since his loss to Adam, and he's been refusing to actually help at the hotel lately. Not that he seemingly did much in the first place anyway. I don't really find Alastor slinking away here all that odd, but what I do find a bit odd is that Vox just lets Alastor go when Charlie just lies and tells him he's out, which I don't know how Vox didn't see him smack dab in the middle of the lobby when he first entered the building. And he doesn't try and find him or learn more about what he's been doing at the hotel, considering it was the only reason he sent Penchus in the first place. When Charlie tells Vox that redemption is possible, Vox asks to see proof, to which Charlie replies that she has none. When Vox is about to leave, Charlie tells him that she can redeem someone right then and there, and Vaggie, Husk, and Angel all arrive in the lobby, all rightfully thinking that Charlie is a fucking idiot for inviting the V's here. With Vaggie reminding Charlie that they don't even know how Penchus got redeemed, and Angel specifically being in great distress that his abusive boss's colleagues were let into what was a safe space for him by someone who was supposed to be his friend.
Fox is probably broadcasting to Val. Oh, fuck. I don't know what they promised you, but I'm telling you right now, they are bad fucking news. Horrible fucking news!
Great, so not only are the other characters calling our protagonist out, but she's also being a huge asshole to one of them after learning a lesson about their boundaries from the first season. And there's still more of this episode, folks. Charlie continues being an asshole to Angel and pushes him to try and get redeemed in front of Vox. Husk is against this idea initially, but after Charlie brings up that Angel is the closest to being redeemed, he flips rather suddenly. Like seriously, take a look at this and tell me you don't feel the same way too.
Oh, you really done it now, princess. Now, I normally stay the hell out of all this redemption business, but she got a point there, Legs.
Husk assures Angel that not much bad can happen if the redemption fails, and that Alastor is likely lurking nearby, ready to go at Vox if he tries something. Which I don't know why Husk would think that, since Alastor has made it clear that he finds the failure of the hotel entertaining and is explicitly being difficult this season. Husk should especially know that last part, since he's the one Alastor told that to in the first episode.
Alastor, shouldn't you help her?
Should I? Perhaps. Will I? No.
Angel ends up agreeing with Charlie's plan, and we get what many are calling the worst number this season, Speed Run to Redemption. I already don't personally care for Charlie songs all that much in this show. They have a more traditional, Broadway-esque style, and I just prefer songs of other musical styles in the show, but my god is this one just noticeably worse than her other songs. Charlie comes across as very annoying and idiotic in this episode already, and you still very much feel that here with the frantic imagery and tempo speeding up. And on top of that, we obviously know they're not going to redeem Angel Dust in the 3rd episode of this 8-episode season, so the sequence ultimately feels like a waste of our time. Charlie tries one last thing and LARPs as a supervillain, tying Husk to some tracks so that Angel can save him before a train with an angelic weapon attached to it hits him. Angel rightfully calls this out as stupid and not going to work, but when Charlie tries to stop the train, Vox reveals he cut the brakes. I guess he did that before this scene? Whatever. Angel attempts to save Husk, undoing the rope and standing in front of the train. Why doesn't he just jump off the tracks with Husk now that the thing keeping him there is gone? Does he think he's Sabin from Final Fantasy VI and they can just parry the fucking thing or something? Well, it doesn't matter anyway, because Vaggie just swoops in and saves them. Also, the weapon disappeared from the front of the train in between cuts. I'll just say it's an editing error. Nobody thanks Vaggie for saving them, and Husk storms off after arguing with Angel over what just happened, saying he volunteered Angel because he thought he genuinely wanted redemption. Vaggie has to tell Charlie that Angel isn't Penchus, and Charlie comes to the monumental conclusion that nobody else could have ever come up with in tens of thousands of years.
Okay, we have been trying to recreate Penchus's redemption, but maybe all we need to do is have Angel act against his sins.
Charlie, you've been alive for how long, and you never once considered that everybody ended up in hell for different reasons and thus would need to be redeemed in different ways? Has the extent of your methods this whole time really just been shitty roleplay and nothing else? Charlie then asks Angel what his sin was so they can figure out how to redeem it. I'm going to say this again. Charlie, the character in the show who wants to redeem sinners, asks Angel Dust what his sin was, because apparently she has never once asked the very first guest at her hotel what sin he committed that landed him in hell so that she could try and redeem it in the 7 to 8 months she has known him for. I understand that Charlie is supposed to be naive. I mean, for fuck's sake, I even think she's in character in season 1, episode 4. But this is just such a severe level of ignorance that makes her efforts to redeem sinners come off as incredibly vain. Though not as vain as Herbie Hops.
This was on the floor in the arcade. See, look at me being a fucking citizen and not a thievy piece of shit that would probably turn around and sell it for money in this town. And unfortunately, this is also the same state where you have state police officers that are causing DWI charges and trafficking child.
Angel doesn't want to tell Charlie a sin when she finally asks him, which makes sense in the moment, considering what events just took place and considering that his abusive boss's colleagues are still around. But Vox steps in and reveals that Valentino told him one time that Angel Dust was in fact a murderer. Which isn't really all that shocking, since Angel Dust talks like a mobster, wields Tommy guns as weapons, and killed people on screen last season, but the show thinks you should be shocked by this with how the characters react to it.
Killed your dad, right? At least that's what Val told me. What did he do? Hit you?
I'm honestly a bit annoyed by these specific details about Angel's sin, since because he's a good guy, they're probably going to make the sin easy for the audience and the other characters to forgive, like with Penchus' sin. Like, given Vox's dialogue and the fact that every character in this universe already has daddy issues, they're probably going to make Angel's dad a huge piece of shit who did horrible things to his other family members, thus vindicating Angel for killing him. But you know, that technically hasn't happened yet, so I guess we'll see down the road.
Hey, that's enough. You can shit on me. You can mock me, but I won't allow you to push my friends around like that, okay?
Charlie, if I recall correctly, the only reason you invited Vox here in the first place was because he was shitting on you and only you. Fuck the hell off with this don't hurt my friends bullshit, because they wouldn't even be hurt right now if you just didn't take Vox's bait. Charlie finally tells Vox to leave, but before he does, he asks Charlie if she thinks that he can be redeemed. To which she boldly replies that she thinks anyone can be redeemed, which noticeably irritates Vox. Charlie apologizes to Angel, who calls her out on how often she says sorry to the point where it becomes meaningless. And while Angel is rightfully pissed and telling her off, he seems more pissed off about his sin being revealed than he is about Husk almost dying or about anything else that just happened. Yeah, the discussions between the main characters after the train incident are pretty rushed. It's clear they didn't put as much runtime into them as they really should have. But you know, there's still 5 episodes left of the season. We still have plenty of time to see Angel, Husk, and Charlie all talk things out about this episode's events properly, which could still be good.
I have a bad feeling.
Vox and Velvette air their hit piece on the hotel, which causes some of the current guests to leave. Would have been pretty interested to see what the Hazbin Hotel's new guests were up to in this episode of Hazbin Hotel, but oh well, guess we'll never know for these ones who hung up their keys. Oh yeah, and I guess Cherry Bomb chose to stay at the hotel when she was thinking of leaving earlier, but like, who cares? This episode was just fucking awful. I can't be fucked to care about Cherry Bomb, and Charlie was just ruined for the sake of having something happen in favor of the villain. I suppose it's a tradition now for the 3rd episodes in each season of the show to be the worst ones.
I can break these cuffs.
You can't break those cuffs.
Charlie's subplot for episode 4 begins with her still bent on improving the hotel's reputation against Vox's rhetoric, and she heads down to Katie Killjoy's news station with Nifty. Seeing as how Katie works for Vox Tech, I don't really see why Charlie expects any better outcome from doing an interview with her. Also, why Nifty of all characters for a publicity job, especially when she's already been shown to freeze up on camera? This is just going to be another huge waste of time, isn't it?
It's nice to meet you, Miss Morningstar.
So Katie saying this despite meeting Charlie in the pilot was what led to VizzyPop saying the pilot is spiritually canon, and her excuse is that Katie just forgot Charlie was on her new show. Which I don't know that I exactly buy Katie just forgetting she interviewed someone as prolific as the Princess of Hell. Especially when she's apparently met her twice, unless the shot in the commercial from the very first episode of the series is just supposed to be depicting the same interview from the pilots. I also think VizzyPop is just kind of talking out of her ass here, because Charlie never even tries to correct Katie in the scene when she's acting like they haven't met before.
It is Miss, right? Because we all know queers can't get married.
What?
Also, I don't have anything against Brandon Rogers. I like him as Blitz and I think he can be pretty funny, but I just prefer Faye Mata from the pilot as Katie Killjoy. Like, I know that Brandon voicing her is a reference to another character he plays in something else, but it's just harder to take Katie seriously, even as a minor antagonist, when I just hear Blitz's voice coming out of her. I mean, at least it's not this Brandon voicing her, I guess.
Oh, jeez. Look, I wasn't turning red because I was choking. I was turning red because
you what? Spit it out already!
It's because I'm flustered by one of the girls here. I really like one of them. There, I said it. Happy?
So the interview begins, and Katie casually drops a pretty big bomb in regards to the world building.
The same angels that made it their whole thing for 7 years to kill as many of us as possible.
Yeah, so apparently these exterminations that are a major source of conflict between two realms existing since creation haven't even been going on for a full decade. Which is really surprising to me because Charlie's storybook in the beginning of season 1 made it come off like they've been happening for thousands of years ever since Lucifer fell. Though ironically, this new tidbit does actually help partially alleviate one of my biggest criticisms in season 1. That being, I found it ludicrous that no one found out for all this time that angels' own weapons can harm them. I mean, it doesn't completely fix the issue, but it's at least more believable that no one knew this for 7 years instead of for tens of thousands. Also, 7 years is how long ago Lilith and Alastor both disappeared for, so I expect these characters and the exterminations to all be connected somehow down the road. Where that road leads to, we'll see in future seasons. As you probably guessed, Charlie's words still end up getting twisted in the interview when she ends up bringing Nifty on camera to vouch for the hotel, which she does, or at least tries to, in the song Clean It Up. Yeah, it's pretty clear by this point that Charlie only brought Nifty because she hasn't had her own song in the show yet, and now was apparently just the best time to give her one. The song's okay at least. Much like Nifty, I don't really have much of a formal opinion on it, but yeah, Nifty doesn't really help, and that's basically Charlie's subplot for the episode. The main plot of this episode focuses on Alastor as he's grown increasingly irate from his scar and broken staff, which he got from Adam. And after a petty squabble with Lucifer, he quits the hotel in a bitch fit.
You should use a coaster.
That's it. Fuck this. I quit.
You're a pussy.
Alastor pays Rosie a visit to tell her he quits, but Rosie tells him that it's not up to him whether or not he quits the hotel, as it's revealed that the one whose leash Alastor is on, alluded to in season 1, is in fact Rosie herself. Alastor was a serial killer when he was a human, and he ended up using a voodoo ritual to contact Rosie in the afterlife and strike a deal with her to continue his fun after his death. Rosie agreed to make him the strongest sinner in hell when he died in exchange for Alastor accomplishing some mysterious task while his soul is owned by Rosie until then. Alastor then died the next day since he was mistaken for a deer by a hunter, which I guess is the reason he has the deer ears and antlers. So wait, if that's how that works, then why is Penchas a snake exactly? Snakes had nothing to do with his death or even really his sin. Oh, and we're also told all this through Rosie telling it to Alastor, despite the fact that he obviously knows his own backstory. So you know, that's twice now we've had Alastor's history told to us through characters reciting it to other characters who already know it. Unless Angel Dust being told Alastor's history in Hell in the pilot by Vaggie isn't spiritually canon to the series. I've seen people express confusion by this mystery box of Alastor's owner just casually being revealed like this just halfway through season 2. But I'm personally more confused by the fact that Rosie can just give a sinner an insurmountable amount of power greater than her own when they first arrive in Hell. I'm assuming that it's going to be revealed later that Rosie isn't who she seems and is some kind of being higher than an overlord with close ties to Lilith. But this hasn't been told to us yet, so with the current material that we have, it makes overlords in Hell an even muddier concept than they already are. Alastor brings up that his broken staff and wound should mean that he's no longer the strongest sinner in Hell anymore and that he shouldn't have to do what Rosie says. But Rosie assures him that he is still the strongest and refuses to fix his staff because...
In due time.
Again, just because. She doesn't mention that she'd be losing anything by fixing it, and I would think that if you want someone to do something for you, you'd want them to be as well-equipped and able-bodied as possible, especially if that person is also a demon overlord who's still more powerful than you are and is known for screwing other demons over. But I guess I've also never owned a slave before, so what do I really know? Rosie then asserts her dominance further with the number Don't You Forget. It's pretty unique from the rest of the show's songs with its more ragtime style, and it reinforces that Rosie ultimately views Alastor as a pet despite how she was treating him in front of Charlie in season 1. We also get confirmation that Alastor's 7-year disappearance was at Rosie's request. Don't have much else to say about this one, it's just a nice addition to the soundtrack. Alastor concocts a plan to free himself from the deal he made with Rosie, which begins with him challenging Vox and the V's to a street fight. With his staff still broken, Alastor appears to struggle against the V's. Though the V's would be flooring Alastor much harder into a much more definitive defeat if they actually all came at him at once, but instead they just attack him one at a time. I know Vox gets thrown into the side of a building at one point, but he seems perfectly fine once he teleports back in after Val and Velvette attack Alastor. What, was he just getting another fucking coffee before jumping back into the fray? Valentino also doesn't fly during this fight despite the fact that he has wings. I imagine those would be pretty useful in a fight, especially when you have ranged weapons. And Alastor also removes him from the battle by just throwing 2 of the tiny minions at him, which I don't think would keep Val occupied for that long since they don't seem very strong outside of being a distraction for Alastor to capitalize off of and get a hit in on someone, which he doesn't on Val here. And Val could probably just open his coat wings to knock the minions back, yet the only time Val opens up his wings this entire fight is when he's running, not flying, and Alastor dispersing his own red smoke. And then he just puts them back like 5 seconds later. Like, I don't get it. You have wings. Why aren't you using them for so many more things against grounded targets? And Velvette probably has the least excuse just to sit back. She's shown later to be capable of using much quicker spells that are still effective, yet they just have her do this weird live streaming spell cast while Alastor just awkwardly sits there waiting for a millennia. Well, whatever, it's not a 1v3 for long anyway, as Nifty sees Alastor in trouble once the news station starts reporting on it and rushes to help him, picking up Husk along the way. Husk engages Velvette and Nifty engages Valentino, but when she gets pinned down by Val, Alastor, who is pinned against the wall by Vox off screen, offers Vox a deal. He offers to be Vox's prisoner, with the terms being that he spares Nifty and Husk and promises not to lay his hands on Charlie. Vox is skeptical at first, saying that Alastor is trying to talk his way out, but agrees without hesitation once he hears the part about Charlie. A bit odd, seeing as how Charlie in the hotel seemed vital to Vox's plan with how he's been talking and acting, but okay. Vox takes a big victory lap with the tied up Alastor that lasts a bit too long, and he tries to get information from Alastor on why he's at the hotel or how he's so powerful, but Alastor refuses to tell him anything. Man, if only there was someone last episode you could have asked. Alastor taunts Vox about relying on others, just like he did in Season 1, and he reminds Vox of an important moment in their relationship years ago when they had known each other for quite a while. Vox had asked Alastor to be his partner out of respect, but Alastor blew him off, berating him and telling him that there are no friends in hell. With the crumbs and stayed gone from Season 1 and how open things still were for Vox and Alastor's history, I was sort of hoping there would be more to it than Vox more or less just being a bitter ex, but I guess that's just on me for thinking that. And to those saying that Vox wasn't being genuine here, Vizipop has confirmed he was, and this flashback is very clearly from his point of view. Vox is clearly hurt by this cheap shot of Alastor's, but he immediately hides it and transitions into a reprise of Don't You Forget, where the two go back and forth until Vox says he'll keep Alastor alive to rub his victory in his face and asserts who's currently the one on top. I do like the reprise a bit more than the original, though mostly because of the leitmotif of once we get up there at the end of it. Oh, and Valentino kills the sexual tension, which ends the song and the episode.
You two should just fuck already. What? Am I wrong? And can I film it?
Oh god, that shit's fucking hilarious, yeah!
Yeah, the episode was rather mid overall. Charlie's part sucked balls once again, and by this point I couldn't really be fucked to care about any of Alastor's yet to be opened mystery boxes. We're already halfway through the season and it feels like nothing has happened yet.
Come and see the violence inherent in the system! Help! Help! I'm being repressed!
Episode 5 begins with a song right off the bat, that being Bad With Us, where many of the Overlords receive news that the V's have captured Alastor, and Vox gains support from all of them except for Zestiel and Carmilla. The song is okay, but it does highlight an issue that many songs in Hazbin have, being that they just kind of feel too short. Many of the songs feel like they're either missing a second verse or a bridge, and with all the different musical styles this one goes through as Vox talks to different overlords, Bad With Us especially feels like it doesn't stay for very long. Oh, and the fact that they're now trying to fit 3 songs into some episodes this season doesn't do the length any favors. Though I did find the joke with Vox's casual racism and him being scolded for it pretty funny, even though it does make him a hypocrite for chewing out Velvette for speaking out against Carmilla.
Cha-cha-cha! Stop it!
We then see Charlie trying to get Heaven's attention on the roof of the hotel. And I know that someone else has already poked fun at this on Twitter when the episode came out, but this part is still pretty funny out of context.
Thanks, Baggy. Ugh, this would just be so much easier with Alastor.
Though I don't know why Charlie, who didn't even go to Alastor 2 episodes ago to fix her Vox problem, would now think he can somehow help her get in contact with Heaven when it took her dad to do that in the first season. Though Vaggie remembers that Charlie's own father exists, and on her way to ask him for help, she herself helps some of the guests and runs into Angel, who tells her that Husk has been leading group therapy sessions, and we get a cutaway to that.
Maybe you should try not being a feeble-minded smooth brain for once. Am I doing therapy right?
Husk and Angel seem to have resolved their argument from episode 3 off screen, since Angel seems happy with Husk leading the therapy sessions, and there was even a scene of them being pretty chill in the last episode.
Hey, have you ever heard of a blobfish?
What? Why are you like this, Angel? Hey, Nick, what the fuck?
Also, this is the first time this season we see the hotel trying to redeem any of the new guests, and it's basically just a joke about how Husk is bad at doing therapy. Why does this show seemingly have no interest in the thing it's titled after? Vaggie asks Lucifer if he's seen what Vox has been saying about Charlie, and we get these odd responses from him.
Oh, the TV head guy. Yeah, he's all over the place. Guy really likes to hear himself talk, huh?
Have you been listening to him at all?
Nope.
So Lucifer has seen Vox's face all over the place, yet hasn't seen that he's been talking about his own daughter, or seemingly even that he captured Alastor, when those are the 2 major things Vox has been doing in the public eye this season that would also be of great interest to Lucifer. Charlie's own face was in a goddamn blimp, for fuck's sake. Also, how would Lucifer have even seen any trace of Vox if he was shown last season to be a shut-in who doesn't even watch television?
You know, I haven't been watching much TV lately. Scrambles the brain.
It really feels like they just wanted to have Jeremy Jordan read a cutesy joke about Vox being a narcissist while still having his character find out about the Charlie slander in this scene, and they didn't care how all the cogs meshed together to have both things happen simultaneously. Lucifer tells Vaggie that he can't smite or kill Vox because being down here with all these sinners is meant to be his punishment.
I'm stuck here with all these sinners, can't kill them, can't do nothing with them, so I just have to ignore them.
I actually don't mind the fact that Lucifer can't kill sinners and think it's a neat idea that makes sense as a punishment for him, given how he gave humanity free will and is now forced to view the consequences of it for all eternity, but it does still result in plenty of world-building problems. Lucifer is the king of hell, and the sinners seem to treat him as being in charge of the domain. Hell, Charlie being his daughter is probably the only reason the Hazbin Hotel even exists. Yet at the same time, Lucifer isn't able to punish his sinner subjects if they step out of line, even in non-lethal ways. He mentions he can't do nothing with them, but this line is still fairly vague. Does it mean he can only look and not touch, even though he just ignores the sinners anyway? Like he can't just take Vox off the air, cut the power to V-Tower, or anything that can hinder or further torment Vox without killing him? Couldn't he just hire an assassin to take care of Vox, or get the other 6 deadly sins to do something? They've been shown to put people on trial for less than what Vox ends up doing this season. I know the real reason the sins aren't doing anything is because Visipop didn't have the Prime deal with Hell of a Boss yet that finally lets characters actually be able to appear across both shows, which is why Valentino has that weird gender-bent physically android despite clearly preferring dudes. But there's still no in-universe reason for why the sins aren't intervening, so it's still a problem. What would even happen if Lucifer broke this no-smiting sinners rule? Would the angels just punish him further somehow, despite him already being in hell? Outside of loot, they don't seem to give that much of a shit that Lucifer helped kill the first man, regardless of whether or not he could legally do it. I mean, fuck, heaven just regularly kills sinners themselves anyway. Would they have really cared that much in the past before the events of the show if Lucifer did something about a sinner that was actively a nuisance or a threat to them? Like, there's no exceptions or strange cases where they would allow him to break this rule anywhere in whatever fine print exists? They've been treating heaven and hell like 2 sovereign states from one another up until this point, yet one state is apparently creating laws for the other that it can't stop itself from rising up against the state that made those very laws. Well, whatever. Vaggie brings up that Vox likely doesn't know that Lucifer can't harm sinners, and she successfully gets Lucifer to act by bringing up Alastor to make his dick feel small. I would think that Lucifer loving his own daughter would have been enough motivation for him to do something about Vox, but sure, let's just keep writing off the Alastor and Lucifer feud. Seriously, can anyone who's a fan of this dynamic just genuinely tell me why they think it's funny? Emily and Sarah are watching Charlie from heaven, and they debate on whether or not they should go down and help her. Emily wants to visit Charlie with gift baskets, while Sarah is hesitant to go down there at all, but she ultimately agrees when Pentious, as the Hell expert, assures her that it's a good idea. Sarah, Emily, Abel, and Lute, for some reason, all go and meet Charlie, who asks if she can meet Pentious, but Sarah just says,
"The snake is fine. He misses you all. I'm sorry we can't bring him."
So, is the implication that winners are just physically unable to leave heaven, just like how sinners, as confirmed by Viv, aren't physically able to leave the Pride Ring? In fact, now that I think about it, why should we even take Vox's plan to take over heaven seriously if he's also stuck in his own domain? The world building really is just one of the worst parts of the show, especially when you consider that there's a sister series running alongside it. Like, I know Amazon doesn't give them much time, but it still doesn't really excuse the writers leaving such wide gaps for the viewers to try and fill in on their own. You can honestly resolve some of these issues with as little as 1 or 2 lines, for fuck's sake. Also, why the fuck can't they just take Charlie up to see Pentious? She's been to heaven before. I mean, I know there's a lockdown and all, but that was Sarah's idea, and she doesn't even seem to see Charlie as a threat at all right now. You could just have Charlie and Pentious catch up in some isolated room without alarming Heaven's residents, or just have Charlie dip her head through a portal like how Emily did in the first episode this season. I don't fucking know. Charlie realizes that she can have the angels apologize at a big rally Vox is putting on, and while Sarah is once again hesitant, she once again agrees. So why did Heaven go on lockdown again if Sarah is just willing to interact directly with the subjects of the kingdom she went on lockdown over? This whole thing just seems so fucking pointless. Backstage before the rally, Alastor goads Vox about how he needs Valentino's help for the show, leading to Vox out of insecurity telling Valentino to manage backstage instead of coming out on stage with him, which very noticeably irritates Val. They're very obviously trying to set up this plot point later where the other Vs turn on Vox, but this moment here just doesn't feel that effective to me. Valentino's contribution here is just providing hot dancers for the rally, which don't seem to please the crowd all that much more than Vox's rhetoric does, and the show has Val say that he has a vision for the plan too, despite also having him fail to understand it at first as a joke in episode 1.
I know you won't believe this, but I don't understand. Okay, but like, I don't get it. Why do we even need to rule heaven?
I have the vision.
I have vision.
Sure you do.
Also, this moment feels like Vox falling for a very obvious trap of Alastor's way too easily, especially when he hardened his resolve at the end of the last episode. Lucifer comes in to stop the rally, putting on a show and singing a rock song meant to intimidate Vox, but Vox remains unshaken and starts the number Vox Populi, where he berates Lucifer, calls him weak for not smiting him, and props himself up as the people's voice. The song is fine, but it's still one of the weaker Vox songs among the plethora of songs with him we've already gotten this season. Plus, I was actually enjoying Lucifer's part of the song at the beginning, fuck you. After the number, Charlie and the Angels arrive to apologize for years of genocide with the gift baskets.
You are apologizing for genocide with gift baskets?
Yeah, so the apology obviously doesn't work, and Vox proceeds to show pictures of the exterminations and some pictures of Lucifer at the rally shortly beforehand. Why is he tiptoeing out just now when he's been shown to make portals? Whatever. Sarah eventually crashes the fuck out and says that sinners like Vox are why she started the exterminations in the first place, leading to the third Vox song this episode, Vox Day, which is mostly just a villainous reprise of Lucifer's part of Vox Populi earlier, where Vox declares war on heaven. Honestly, despite how short it is, it does go pretty hard. The Angels retreat back to heaven, more guests start leaving the hotel, and Charlie returns home to confront Lucifer.
He ruined everything, is what happened.
Really now, Charlie. Lucifer ruined everything, and you didn't do anything wrong by asking the Angels to apologize for 7 years of slaughter with 3 fucking gift baskets. Yeah, no, one of the Angels that you brought having a low-tier god moment totally didn't do anywhere near the damage that your dad did.
Your life is nothing. You serve 0 purpose. You should kill your—
Lucifer explains that Vaggie reached out to him for help, and Charlie then gets mad at her too.
Vox was able to spin it. Again!
Charlie, that's what Vox does. I thought it—
So if you knew that this is what he does, then why did you suggest Lucifer just goes down and gives Vox a death threat in front of thousands of sinners without any other plan? Sure, you didn't think Vox knew he couldn't smite him, but if Vox retreats, he could still spin a story against Lucifer that makes him look like a tyrant and potentially lead to more unrest in hell. Though in fairness, I don't know what I expected from the dipshit who didn't even know that angelic weapons could harm her despite losing an eye and 2 wings to one.
Angelic weapons? It's that simple? How has no one else figured this out?
Charlie is upset with Vaggie for going behind her back, but Vaggie explains that she did it because Charlie isn't listening to her and that it's actually her who's ruining the hotel by playing into Vox's game. I kinda get where Vaggie's coming from, but if Charlie's not listening to her anyway and Vaggie thinks everything Charlie is doing on her own is just hurting the hotel, would it really have hurt to just say, I'm gonna go ask your dad if he can help, or even bring up the possibility to Charlie when at the worst all she could have done was just say no? Like, why leave the kid alone in a room with matches, you know?
I think you should leave, Dad. You have fucked things up for me enough.
I'm punishing and grounding you until you learn to be nicer to and everyone, and punishing you until you learn to like him and everyone, and like your job.
The Hazbin Hotel.
The characters all mope and the episode ends. Yeah, this one was kind of bad, not much else to say.
That was my entire life savings, dude! Oh my god. Oh god. Oh my god, I'm gonna be sick.
Episode 6 begins with Vox meeting with Carmilla once again, trying to convince her to build a weapon for him by getting Velvette to apologize for the meeting in Season 1 and saying that her own family's protection against the Angels would be a perk to an alliance. And because Carmilla once again isn't a real character and just a walking reserve of angelic steel, the mere mention of her daughters easily brings her on board. Reminder, by the way, that Carmilla's daughters are her main motivator for what she does, and yet their names have never once been said in the show, and they've only had like 2 or 3 lines total in the entire series between them. They're not characters, they're plot devices for another plot device, that's how low they are. Velvette chews Vox out for throwing her under the bus once they leave, but Vox doesn't bend to her and still insists she fucked up the meeting months ago. I don't really know why we should feel sympathetic for Velvette here when getting Carmilla on the V side is now crucial for their plan to succeed. Though, again, Vox is a hypocrite considering how he pulled up to Carmilla like this last episode. Zestial, who was disguised as a spider the whole time while the V's were there, scolds Carmilla, telling her she's making a mistake. Carmilla denies this, so Zestial leaves, saying he won't return to her side until she comes to her senses. We don't really spend a lot of time with these characters, so like, what does he mean by that? Does he always just crash on that web in the corner there? Are they fucking, or like, what's the deal here? We then cut to Vaggie performing various duties around the hotel when she sees on the TV that Vox has partnered with Carmilla to build the weapon. She tells everyone else at the bar, and her having another argument with Charlie leads to Husk leaving the hotel since he's fed up with their drama and since Alastor's not there anyway. Is that how that works? Like, if Alastor's captured, you can just not do the thing he told you to do? Okay then. Vaggie and Charlie both decide to try and speak to Carmilla, and Vaggie's justification for going is...
She listens to me.
Bitch, she only listened to you in season 1 because the writers gave her amnesia in that scene so that you could remind her that the exterminations target all demons even if the hotel was targeted first for that specific one. If anything, the wings on your own damn back are proof that you listen to her. They fail to convince Carmilla she's still bent on her own daughter's protection. She reminds Charlie that Lilith has been gone for years, and she helps give Vaggie PTSD over what being in the extermination squad was like. Yeah, so these flashbacks don't really come up again or go anywhere for the rest of the season. The big thing here is still her changing her name.
What do you think about Vanessa?
When they arrive back at the hotel, Vaggie sees everything in disarray from Nifty being left in charge, and she's called up by Charlie where she apologizes to her with a tea party. Good to see that Charlie and Vaggie have resolved their conflict with minimal dialogue and within a single episode once again, though I guess it at least wasn't other characters who resolved it for them this time. Unless them talking to Carmilla made gears in Charlie's head turn, which I guess they're conveying happened here. It's still pretty lame either way. Charlie goes on about how she's overly concerned with making her mother proud and starts having a mental breakdown over everything happening, and Vaggie even more suddenly starts the musical number Easy.
And I'm a hypocrite and my dreams are gonna die. Shut up, you know that I love you.
Corny opening aside, I actually do like the song quite a bit. Even if it does feel a bit shorter and more repetitive compared to the other songs this season, it is still pretty fun and catchy. It doesn't really feel like it serves much purpose though, since Charlie and Vaggie already resolved their conflict from the last episode. The most purpose it really serves is easing Charlie's nerves from a mental breakdown she just started having in that scene by having Vaggie say "let's fuck." At least Shaggy fans actually have something now that isn't just a sloppy seconds reprise of a song Charlie had with her dad. Following Husk's subplot after he leaves the hotel, he goes to a casino that it's implied he used to rule over when he was an overlord. He starts indulging in gambling and drinking like old times, which leads into the song Love in a Bottle. This is easily one of the best songs in the season. It's got a nice jazzy beat, the visuals are fun, and Keith David sounds like he's having the time of his life. This song and Loser Baby solidify Husk having the best songs in the show, and I fully expect him to have one of the best songs in Season 3 too. The song ends with Husk going on a losing streak and getting wasted at the bar. A singer eventually starts performing on stage, and it turns out to be Angel Dust in Drag, who sings a song that's called, well, Losing Streak. It's revealed after this number that this is just a regular job for him, so it's a pretty big coincidence it's here at a casino Husk apparently used to own. Like, I genuinely thought this was just Husk hallucinating and seeing Angel and the singer at first, but no, it really was just him. The song is good though. I don't really have much else to say about it, I'm just not really into these kinds of slow club songs. And I especially don't want to rain on the parade of Angel Dust fans here, since this is probably going to be the best thing he'll be getting all season. Angel sits down and talks with Husk after the performance, where they do actually have a nice chat.
I'm just not worth saving. This here is what I'm meant for.
And I'm just a sex worker in a dress whose lunch was 3 cigarettes. To be nice.
While Husk and Angel's dynamic is still one of the strongest in the show, I still feel like there's something missing here between them that was present in Season 1. Sure, they finally apologize to one another here, and Angel does convince Husk to go back to the hotel, but I just wish it didn't feel like the conflict from earlier this season just resolved itself like how it felt with Charlie and Vaggie again. Like, I know that people in real life can simmer down and make up once they're apart for a while, but we're not even really exploring what's going on in these characters' heads in regards to the inciting factors of the conflict once they're apart. In fact, Husk and Angel's case might actually be worse, because at least we actually see Charlie and Vaggie fighting in between, while Angel and Husk just get along fine before this. It's not as bad as the Ozzy situation in Hell of a Boss retroactively being resolved with text messages, but it still feels clunky, and I find it disappointing as I expected more from these two characters given their material in Season 1. Shortly before all this, Vox asks Valentino to let him borrow Angel Dust, which leads to Velvette calling him out for how he's been treating the other Vs lately, and Alastor rage-baiting Vox into disrespecting Valentino further. Val calls Vox out too, but he still ultimately agrees to lend him Angel. Angel, after leaving the casino, arrives at a job for Val, but when he enters a motel room, he's greeted by Vox, who gives him a rather violent beating and drops a major bombshell that he's been using Angel Dust to spy on the hotel as early as Season 1. Yeah, so if you're more confused than you are shocked by this reveal like how I was when first watching the episode, let me explain to you why this twist has no impact. First off, while there have been some subtle hints that this has been happening, such as Vox's brief appearance looking up at Angel during Poison in Season 1, which is when this brainwashing was seemingly implanted, and Angel mentioning having headaches in Episode 5, there's really not any that would have truly been an oh shit moment looking back. In fact, I honestly wouldn't even blame you if you just didn't know Vox could hypnotize people at this point, because he's only done it on screen once in Season 1, and it was just on a crowd of nobodies that he was advertising shit to. Even someone who regularly talks about the show like Pink King forgot about this when watching Season 2. Outside of Vox failing to hypnotize Val just earlier in this episode, and Val calling it that freaky eye shit, there's no other mention of Vox having hypnotic powers at all. Like, sure, it obviously looks like a hypno eye, but Vox just kinda bugs it out all the time for facial expressions even when he's not trying to get get someone to do something. It just comes off as an aesthetic quirk like King K. Rool's eye rather than as something performing a function. In fact, if Vox can just hypnotize people, then why isn't he seen doing it much more often, especially when he's trying to recruit people to join him in the Resistance? What even determines how susceptible a character is to his hypnosis? It's just such an underbaked ability of his that you easily forget he even has. The second reason this twist doesn't really work is because it doesn't really come off as Vox always being one step ahead given the information he actually got from the hotel.
How do you think I was always one step ahead of the princess? Or how I knew the angels were coming?
Wait, are you talking about the angels striking the hotel first in the season 1 finale? Because I just assumed that Charlie made this public knowledge given the dialogue in episode 7.
Why wouldn't you use what you know to fight? To avoid the very problem you and your little friends are facing right now.
We have just received word from the Heaven Embassy that the next extermination is happening sooner than ever before.
Not to mention, Vox is a news tycoon who's been shown to prey on sinners' fear of the angels and even showed pictures from other exterminations in the last episode, so it just seems like he's always been monitoring the exterminations anyway, no matter where they happen.
Or that Lucifer couldn't do anything to me!
This is actually something you would never have found out without angel dust. But again, it's still difficult to feel like this had a lot of impact when Lucifer could have just played his cards much better anyway, and when Charlie and the angel showing up on their own shortly after seemingly did far more damage than anything he did. Not to mention that when Lucifer was brought up by Vox once the angels arrived, he was just sort of glossed over and the angels never even commented on his involvement.
Charlie ain't looking too good under pressure.
Was this really all that important to the plan? Charlie not doing well under pressure doesn't really matter all that much when they just made her act stupid and out of character all season anyway, to the point where she invited Vox to the hotel herself.
Redemption is possible, Maggie!
Wouldn't this be something that should scare Vox from going after Charlie further? Like, sure, she never says that she has proof here, but she also never says that she doesn't have it. The part here about Heaven being on lockdown is the one thing you could maybe argue would be useful to Vox, but neither he nor the fucking show itself do anything with it anyway. Out of all the information in the montage, you can really only make an argument there's one useful thing here he actually did something with, that being the Lucifer can't kill sinners tidbit. It's very hard to feel like Vox made a high IQ play that he's truly been utilizing in the long run, or that's really changed the context of the story up until this point. The other characters have also just been making such low IQ decisions on their own this season to make anything he's been doing possible. We had no idea he's been one step ahead this whole time because everybody else has just been 2 steps behind him anyway. Oh yeah, also Vox always being able to brainwash angel dust like this just kinda completely nullifies sending Penchas to the hotel in the first place. I know they didn't exactly have him on hand at the time, but he was going to have to come back to work anyway, which he did, so, you know, why not just wait for him instead of risk making yourself known with someone incompetent? Right, well Husk comes back and sees Angel isn't there, and the episode concludes with Charlie trying to call her dad to apologize for blowing up at him. It looks like she calls Lucifer at first, but it turns out that Vox impersonated her voice and was somehow able to alter caller ID to prepare for the next phase of his plan. Because I guess the TV demon also has the power to manipulate phones like that, for some reason. This was probably one of the better episodes this season, mostly because it actually focused on the main cast for once, but it's still kinda just in the okay territory, especially with that dumb Angel Dust as a spy twist. Oh yeah, and the other Charlie from the Much Better Show was in this episode too, I guess.
Oh my fucking god, that was my fucking hell mortgage on my hell house! Fuck!
I've come to make an announcement. Shadow the Hedgehog's a bitch-ass motherfucker. He pissed on my fucking wife.
Episode 7 begins with Lucifer literally walking into a trap set by Vox and getting captured within the first minutes. Well, at least we got that out of the way fast, I guess. Also, wait, I know Angelic Steel can kill angels, but has it ever been established to suppress or weaken their powers? Couldn't Lucifer just turn into a snake to get out of the braces and then make a portal to get out of the glass? Is the glass angelic? What, is it made out of angelic sand? If it is, then why does Veggi's spear do nothing against it later, but Vox's claws can scratch it here? Are Vox's fucking claws made out of... fuck it, let's just move on. So after some banter between Vox, Lucifer, and Alastor, Vox prepares Lucifer to be used as a battery for the weapon Carmilla built. Lucifer calls Vox a failure and makes him ponder in isolation, which leads into the musical number Brighter. This song is easily one of the best this season. It's got a really catchy chorus and it utilizes Christian Borle's vocal range incredibly well. Though I do think it's a bit too short with how much of Vox just talking there is in it, and the fact that the key change comes in halfway through the second verse kind of does reinforce that. Still, it does actually do a decent job of showing Vox's past life as a weatherman named Vincent Whitman, who killed his way up to higher and higher levels of stardom before brutally dying at a big meeting for his newfound cult. Vox's backstory is easily the best of the Sinner backstories this season, and a TV falling on his head is a much better death explaining his demon form than Alastor just standing in front of a tree and getting Dick Cheney'd. However, just because Vox's backstory is the best of the three, that doesn't necessarily mean it's perfect. And I'm talking about more than just the fact that the police 100% should have found out that he was responsible for all those deaths at the exact same TV station over the course of multiple years. We see Vincent willing to do some fucked up shit to people just doing their jobs, all so that more eyes can be on him. He very clearly wants the spotlight all to himself and jumps to get rid of his superiors once he has no more use for them. Yet at the earliest point we see him as Vox in Hell, he's been crushing on Alastor for years rather than seeing him as just another rival that should be taken down, and he would eventually go on to form a trinity with 2 other overlords despite not liking to share the spotlight. I know at least with the latter point, Vox puts himself above the other Vs regularly, but I feel like there are some scenes we should be including to explain how Vincent changed so drastically once he got into Hell to the point where he was no longer willing to be a solo act. I also would have liked to have seen Vincent climb the ranks through much more manipulation rather than just murder. Again, it would much more effectively paint the picture of Vox as a silver-tongued snake they want you to believe he is. I guess the song's still good anyway. Bazinga! While Charlie is trying and failing to contact her dad, VoxTech releases an emergency broadcast where a hypnotized angel dust announces the Hazbin Hotel and endorses the V's resistance. I mean, I get the celebrity endorsement for the movement, but is there really even any reason for Vox to keep slamming the hotel at this point? In fact, was there even really a reason for him to do it from the start? I thought it wasn't even popular from the very first episode this season once everyone realized it wasn't teaching classes on how to kill angels. That's what it seemed like they were communicating before a bunch of nobodies started walking around in between scenes as set dressing. Vox unveils Carmilla's weapon, which he dubs the Might of Lilith, and he uses it to blast through Heaven's front gates, which come hurtling down to Hell, with one of them even hitting a clock tower. Yeah, there's really not much of a point to this specific part happening outside of making a dramatic shot for the trailer to trick you into thinking Heaven was firing shots back at Hell.
And when the first shot fires, whose side do you want to be on?
Vox then makes an announcement to everyone in Heaven. Yes, I know it's odd that he can just broadcast to Heaven thousands of miles away like this, but it's explained later in the episode. And he threatens Heaven to surrender within 24 hours or else he'll lead an extermination against them. We're 2 episodes from the end, by the way, and we still don't know how the fuck Vox will even get up there when one of the first songs this season was literally titled Once We Get Up There. As much as they try to paint Val like a moron in the first episode, he did actually have a good point in asking this.
How would we, get up there?
Semantics, Val.
Everyone in Heaven looks to Sarah to decide the next course of action, but she becomes too pressured and leaves to pray. Penchus approaches Sarah to comfort her, and while she's skeptical of a human soul helping a seraph initially, she ultimately does open up to Penchus that she doesn't know who to judge anymore and questions how she can even see the good in those deemed wicked with how vile souls like Vox can be. Penchus tells Sarah that the sinners in Hell are scared and gets her to have hope that people even in death can strive to live a better tomorrow through the song Live to Live. Penchus and Sarah seem like an unorthodox pair for a duet, but honestly their dynamic works and I like the song quite a bit. There's a cute callback to It Starts With Sorry from Season 1, Patina Miller is wonderful as usual, and Alex Brightman is able to sing as Sir Penchus in a way that doesn't sound grating. The Season 2 duets are honestly just so much better overall than the Season 1 duets.
Oh my god, who the hell cares?
Back at V-Tower, Velvette calls Vox and tries to tell him they need more support to actually take on Heaven, but he just dismisses her.
You didn't tell me it was gonna blast the gate straight off its bleeding hinges.
What? Bitch, what the fuck did you expect the giant laser to do? Knock the Super Mario Brothers theme on the gate? You're starting a fucking war here. Alastor continues to berate Vox by telling him he's still relying on others for everything, and he successfully manipulates him into inviting Charlie to a big ceremony he's having to declare victory over Heaven. The deal-making demon who agreed to be my prisoner if I didn't lay a finger on a certain individual is trying to get me in the same vicinity as this individual once again. You know, call me crazy, but maybe he's planning something that will fuck me over. Vox invites Charlie to the party, using her dad as an incentive to come, and Sarah sends Emily to go help Charlie in any way she can. They get the idea to broadcast Heaven to Hell, since Vox can do the same but vice versa, when Baxter finally does something important to the plot after 7 episodes of being a background character, and reveals that VoxTech has a security system he himself designed that's been bypassing both Heaven's and Earth's security systems for years. And he confirms that if someone in Heaven with intellect equal to his, which obviously ends up being Penchus, can quickly invent something to make Heaven's technology compatible to Hell's, then they can broadcast Penchus in Heaven all over Hell. And Baxter is okay with risking his job and his life for this because...
You made sure that my blankets were always folded at my requested 45-degree angle to make it more tuckable to my liking.
Right, so as you may have guessed, there are several issues I find with this whole thing. First off, Baxter is a bioengineer. His expertise is in living things. Why and how the fuck did someone in his field of study build an entire security system that can slip between entirely different realms for Vox? A server room doesn't classify as an organism last I checked. Second, Baxter mentioned stealing Earth and Heaven's movies and shows during his explanation.
VoxTech has been pirating Heaven's television channels for decades, and some of Earth's too.
Yet Baxter says he can't broadcast from heaven to hell because he needs someone in heaven to invent something that makes things compatible? But if you can already pirate TV channels playing in heaven, then isn't the technology already compatible? Like, instead of making Pentious invent something, couldn't you just start a broadcast up in heaven and then just fetch it to play in hell? Third, why the fuck didn't anybody think of working to prove Pentious was up there from the beginning if they ultimately decided it could ruin Vox's plans? Yeah, something, we just can't bring him here. But you had a guy at the hotel you could have just asked this entire time if you really wanted to at least explore the broadcast possibility much earlier. But no, let's just ask him about his history with Pentious that's ultimately not even important this season. And fourth, and most importantly, you already have a way to broadcast from heaven to hell. The futuristic Star Wars style holograms from episode 1 of the entire fucking series? Just have Pentious use one of those. If the excuse is that the holograms can only appear in that building, then just fucking bring people there. Hi, so this is editing Dr. Storm here, a semi-different entity from the Dr. Storm you've been listening to, so I can't really seamlessly add more audio regarding this in post like I have been, since it would ruin the flow of this rant. And I also can't really add a text note since what I want to say is too long, so I'm just gonna lay it out in this format. So I didn't realize at first that the building the Gate of Heaven hit was in fact the Heaven Embassy that housed the holograms in Season 1, mostly because the colors are different in the shot for some reason. So if the reasoning is that they can't use the holograms because the clock tower was taken out and that just so happened to make the holograms possible, then one, either Charlie or Emily still should have brought up the holograms, showing that they didn't forget about them, then that way the writers could have at least had someone say, oh, well the clock tower doesn't work, to scratch out the possibility. And two, if the clock tower is what makes the holograms possible, then holy fucking shit is it so goddamn lucky for Vox that the one building in hell that the Gate of Heaven hit was one that could foil his plans. So either way, this is still shitty writing. Alright, now back to video, Dr. Storm. Christ almighty, this whole fucking season would only be like 2 or 3 episodes long if characters just used their goddamn brains. Holy shit! The episode ends with the number 1 day more, when I think about the future. It's basically almost all the characters singing about their goals and feelings before the finale, even delivering short reprises of songs we've heard throughout the season so far. It's alright. Hey, I'm not complaining about more gravity. That song felt too damn short for how good it was. Oh yeah, and I guess Valentino and Velvette are still willing to stick with Vox and have faith that he's going to chill again once they win the day. I still feel like you guys could be making stronger efforts and having a heart-to-heart with Vox to ensure that you actually do win the day, but whatever. Also, I don't feel bad for Valentino and his love life at all because he's a rape. Don't really feel much good or bad about this episode. It was mostly just set up for the finale, really.
That's it? What the fuck?
The season finale begins with our heroes going over the plan to stop Vox. Husk, Cherry, Nifty, and Baxter all sneak into V-Tower with Baxter's clearance. Baxter will then hack into security with Nifty protecting him, and Husk and Cherry will find Angel Dust and snap him out of his mind control. Oh, right, there wasn't actually a scene where the gang figured out that Angel Dust was being mind controlled. The only explanation is that Baxter or maybe even Cherry knew and thought to bring it up to the others, but if that was the case, they likely would have brought it up during the announcement on TV or when Baxter was going over the security system. And considering how Vox doesn't really hypnotize people enough in the show for it to be made clear which characters know he can do this and which can't, I'm counting this as a plot hole. Back to the plan, while the V-Tower groups are busy, Pentious will be building his device in heaven, getting ready to broadcast to hell. And once the broadcast comes through, Charlie and Emily will unite on stage to show that hell and heaven can be at peace and everyone will live happily ever after. Oh, and Vaggy's gonna try and destroy the weapon, but doesn't know how she'll do that yet. Also, their happy little ending card has Alastor on it despite the fact that there's no part of the plan to free him, so that's a bit odd. Charlie and Vaggy head to the party, where Vox revels in embarrassing Charlie, and Vaggy asks Carmilla to help shut down the weapon, but she refuses. Baxter's party sneaks into V-Tower successfully, and he manages to disable the cameras, but Vox's giant pet cyborg shark Shockwave is swimming around the room at the time, and he alerts the Vs of the party's presence. Man, it sure is unfortunate that the genius biotechnist who works at VoxTech knows his way around the building and who is implied to have created this giant aquatic beast with a huge camera lens in the middle of its face just forgot to account for its existence before the mission started. Though, maybe it was just the safest, most surefire way in with nothing more that could have been done. It's not like there's a member on the team who can seemingly just create portals inside any building in hell without even needing to have seen or been inside its interior before, thus making the risk completely unavoidable. Oh wait, there is. Yeah, the angel portals are a huge fucking hole this season, and not in the literal sense. Vaggy finds Lucifer in the weapon, which is ultimately pointless since she never frees him, learns new information, or tells anybody that he's in there. And Velvette engages Baxter and Nifty, while Valentino engages Husk and Cherry trying to save Angel. Despite the broadcast not coming through on time, Emily comes down early to help Charlie get the people on their side, but the show in a pretty rare case remembers that Vox can hypnotize people, and he hypnotizes the audience so that their words fall on deaf ears. Vox restrains Emily, Wait, he can just do that to a high-class angel? Whatever. And it appears he's won the day. Vox declares himself the most powerful sinner in hell, and Alastor uses his favor with Charlie from Season 1 to have her publicly admit Vox is the strongest too, which appears to bring Vox to max power, thus breaking the deal between Alastor and Rosie. Vox then thanks Charlie and puts his hands on her shoulders, which then frees Alastor from Vox, thus Alastor has broken free from 2 deals at once.
You absolute idiot!
I will now go on a very long tangent about why this moment shouldn't have happened. I've seen plenty of people praising Alastor as a genius and a mastermind this season for playing the long game and achieving all this, but there's a fairly well-known saying that smart characters can only truly be as smart as the people writing for them. And when we look at the writer's track record and back at everything that's transpired over the season, Alastor comes across less as playing a game of 5D chess against an entire cast of characters and more as playing tic-tac-toe with a tank of goldfish. Many people have already pointed out that Vox could have easily been thwarted well before the finale in a number of ways, and that they just made the other characters too stupid to actually try those ways. Instead of bringing gift baskets, the angels could have just tried showing that Penchas was in heaven and that redemption is possible much earlier in the story. Lucifer could have found a loophole to not being able to kill Vox, just as loopholes exist in sinner contracts. And he also could have just not walked onto the Red X like a Hell, maybe the angels could just put a portal underneath Vox's weapon so they could yeet it somewhere else. Or even put a portal in between the weapon and heaven so that it potentially just ends up hitting itself. And even if we want to argue that Vox slamming the Hazbin Hotel was vital to getting support, which I personally don't believe it actually was with how little focus the show has even put on the hotel this season, Charlie could have just ignored him and built up a better case for her cause. The point I'm trying to make with all this is that because Vox's success was vital to Alastor's plan, and because Vox's success relied largely on everyone else being an idiot, then this also means that Alastor's success relied largely on everyone else being an idiot. And in addition to that, the hotel crew are just weirdly negligent of the fact that Alastor got captured by Vox for half the season. Vaggie doesn't seem to think too much about it despite being wary of him in the past, Husk and Nifty don't seem to give them much of a shit even after they fought to try and save his life before his capture, and Charlie expresses concern for him several times, yet never actually uses her power to try and free him or even find out what's going on.
What do you think they're doing to him, Vaggie?
I'm sure he's okay. You know how, he's always up to something.
They try to free Angel Dust, yet make absolutely no attempt to free Alastor at all. I think the reason for all this is that the writers just didn't want to have to figure out any solutions for any bumps in the road that would arise for Alastor if the hotel crew tried to rescue him, or figured out that he was up to something, or if Charlie just got close enough for Vox to touch her too early. So they sort of just keep them as far away from Alastor and the V's as possible until the finale, while adding in a couple lines so that it looks like they haven't just completely forgotten he's been captured. Which is certainly a way you could go about it, but removing a variable from the equation entirely is such a lazy, cheap way to solve it. His plan ultimately feels like it requires too much luck and for so many strange and inept decisions from so many parties to be made that he couldn't possibly have accounted for or predicted. Like, if everybody else actually stopped Vox before the finale and after Alastor made his deal with Vox, then Alastor's just kind of fucking screwed. If Baxter remembered he made a giant shark surveilling V Tower, or if Emily remembered she has Doctor Strange's ult, then Penchas would be on the screen before Alastor could even break free, and he'd just be still awkwardly stuck sitting in that fuck-ass chair as both Vox and Rosie's bitch. Speaking of which, let's talk about how Rosie herself is a giant fucking problem in all this. I've already stated that there's seemingly no reason for her not to fix the goddamn staff, but there's still more weird things to discuss with her despite only appearing in one other episode this season.
I want to secure myself amongst the highest demons.
The most powerful sinner in hell, but
I find it pretty odd that Rosie herself was the one to explicitly state that she would make Alastor the strongest sinner in hell when he had only asked to be among the most powerful sinners initially. Like, why even promise him the absolute highest level of power immediately instead of making him have to haggle for it? While this may seem like a strange and small detail to focus on, it is still important because Rosie saying she was making Alastor the strongest sinner in hell was how he was able to find a loophole to break out of the deal. Typically, when you see a pact like this between man and some greater being, the condition is just having the power. It's never the being having to bring the power to a certain level and maintain it indefinitely. Though that's not to say the being won't ever make the man stronger, obviously they would, so that the man can serve them as efficiently as possible. And they can also take the power away from the man if he's disobedient or becomes a legitimate danger with it. But it doesn't work like this for Rosie's deal, so it's even more confusing why she didn't just fix his staff to secure him as the strongest even further. I'm guessing Rosie is some kind of special case, and things are going to be explained in a later season how she was able to grant Alastor his immense power. But assuming she isn't, and any overlord could grant this level of power, then what happens if someone else were to make a deal with another overlord to become the strongest? Would Rosie just lose Alastor without being able to do anything about it? In fact, why the fuck didn't Rosie do anything when Vox was rising to power above Alastor through a highly televised paradigm shift? I understand that Rosie likely has ulterior motives we can't comprehend yet, but she is still a high-ranking sinner in hell, or is at least playing the part of one. She's an overlord who attends meetings, she's the leader of a well-known settlement who enlisted her own people to fight back against the angels in Season 1. She's very much a part of the world, and she very clearly cares about the state of it, so why the fuck does news about Vox's movement or Alastor's capture seemingly never reach her at all? Even if you want to argue that Cannibal Town is so old that it doesn't have TVs or social media, newspapers and flyers still exist. We see them going around at the beginning of Bad With Us. And do they just not have phones in Cannibal Town either? Then how the fuck did she even know to go to the meeting in Season 1? It's not even like Cannibal Town is isolated from the rest of Pentagram City as some Amish settlement. It's amongst all the metropolitan areas to the point where cars drive past and you can clearly see major landmarks in walking distance. In fact, looking back on Bad With Us, Vox was never shown to approach Rosie at all despite approaching every other overlord. Other people have also noticed Rosie's bizarre absence from the sequence and have tried to justify it with a couple reasons. Some have said Vox didn't think it was worth trying to recruit her because he knew she was close with Alastor, while others have said it's because she's affiliated with the Morningstar family. I don't find either of these to be very convincing excuses. Zestial has also been shown to be on fairly good terms with Alastor, yet Vox still approached him. I mean, he didn't sincerely try recruiting him and was mostly condescending to Zestial, but he still showed up to his place regardless. I would imagine that if Vox didn't think he could recruit Rosie, then he would at least show up to her place to gloat about capturing Alastor if he knew she was close to him, or to the Morningstars whose daughter he's already been antagonizing throughout the season. And even then, I personally feel like he would at least try, since having the cannibals, who actually fought back against the angels in a successful battle, on his side seems like insanely good publicity when trying to gather support for a war against heaven. The real reason Vox never showed up to Rosie's place was because the writers didn't know how to make Alastor's plan work if Rosie knew he was captured. She would catch on to what Alastor was trying to do and could very easily throw a wrench in his plans, either by fixing his staff, thus making him harder for Vox to surpass in power, punishing him some other way through the contract, or even just trying to strike up a deal with Vox to get Alastor back in her possession. The writers essentially cheated in helping Alastor win this season by removing Rosie from the world that she was very clearly a part of and praying you didn't notice that she was taking a near 4-episode-long coffee break, or tea break. But unfortunately for them, people noticed. I also find it odd that Rosie flexes her ownership of Alastor and Don't You Forget with the collar around his neck, yet this is the only time the collar actually appears outside of when it breaks. Why doesn't the collar appear around Alastor's neck to choke him when he audibly quits the hotel, like how Alastor's symbols show up around Charlie's hand when Alastor tries to burn the favor from her? How is Alastor able to just go directly fight the V's without consequence, and how doesn't Rosie find out he made a deal to be someone else's captor, yet she's alerted when Alastor escapes her own deal? One possible explanation is that being someone else's prisoner isn't the same as being owned by them, and since Alastor's deal to Vox required he not touch Charlie, this counts as helping Charlie, which works towards the vague goal Alastor is helping Rosie accomplish. Though the latter part is being very generous since the deal was made decades before Charlie even started the hotel and even decades before the exterminations, so I don't know how much this would really count in regards to working towards Rosie's yet-to-be-revealed goal. Can the collars, chains, etc. from this deal-making magic only bind or tighten further if both parties are together in one place? How the fuck is anything in these deals even enforced then if one party can always just hide or avoid the other? Rosie was able to make Alastor disappear for 7 years despite him very clearly not wanting to. How was she able to control him that strongly then but not now? If Alastor had to come in person and tell her he quit, then how the fuck is she even keeping tabs on anything this incredibly powerful and spiteful creature at her beck and call is doing? Rosie has simultaneously been plagued with the same stupidity all the other characters this season have been subject to, was yeeted out of existence entirely, and has been betrayed by the wishy-washy world building also that Alastor's plan could go off without a hitch. All things I never thought I would even have to say about a side character like Rosie.
In due time.
Lastly, I would like to go over Vox's role in Alastor's plan. Alastor is very good at manipulating Vox by insulting his ego. I acknowledge that this much makes logical sense about Alastor's plan. What I don't think really makes sense, however, is Alastor willing to use his goading to seemingly drive a wedge between Vox and the other Vs. If his own success hinges on Vox's success, then wouldn't he at the very least want to make sure that Val and Vel continue to help lift him up to near victory? Why directly try to sabotage their partnership when his own freedom is on the line? In fact, why don't Val and Vel make greater efforts to weaken Alastor's influence over Vox by locking Alastor up somewhere, shutting off all the radios nearby, or even just having some kind of sincere intervention with Vox? Just seems like they're kind of fucking throwing this fight. I've also seen plenty of people confused as to why Charlie saying that Vox is the strongest is the metric that topples Alastor from his title as the strongest, and this confusion is honestly warranted. Despite many characters in Hazbin Hotel being overlords, the logistics of overlords aren't really explained in the show very well. Overlords are formally defined in the show as sinners who own a large number of souls in hell. And I know that this is the main trait classifying a sinner as an overlord, as Carmela would have no reason to tell this to a conference room full of overlords, so it must be here just for us to know.
Together you own millions of souls. Souls at risk with the new extermination schedule.
The show seems to imply that Vox reaches maximum power level, which exceeds that of Alastor's, once his ratings hit 100% approval, which is reached when Charlie calls him the strongest. So rather than the strongest overlord being determined only by the number of soul contracts, now it's determined by that, and by popularity, and also by innate power, I guess? Or is the popularity part exclusive to Vox since he's a TV demon? If it's not exclusive to him, then wouldn't that have just been another risk Rosie was taking that could have easily broken her deal with Alastor? He outright said that his 7-year absence made his name instill much less fear, and we still don't even know why she made him disappear for all that time. In fact, if mere popularity is so important to Vox's perceived strength, then why did Alastor even need to get captured at all for Vox to surpass him? Could Alastor have simply just thrown a fight or multiple fights against Vox, or just declared Vox the strongest himself? Since that would move him down and Vox up simultaneously? If he just let himself be defeated normally in episode 4, couldn't he just break the deal while still keeping a pocket favor from Charlie and not taking the risk of being Vox's prisoner? The worst that could happen is Alastor dies, but he'd just regenerate anyway. Oh yeah, some of you probably don't even know this, but it's been confirmed that sinners regenerate after dying in hell unless it was an angelic weapon that killed them. Honestly, I don't even blame anyone for not knowing this, since it's never explained properly in the show, and since the only case we have of sinners coming back after dying are the Loan Sharks in season 1. Husk and Angel killed them in episode 4, and then they come back later in episode 5 for Mimsy. I didn't even know these were the same guys, or even that they were sinners until I was making this video. I legitimately thought these were the same race of shark hellborn we've seen in Hell of a Boss. Silly me for thinking this connected universe would actually utilize the same elements between shows, I know. I also do think it's a bit ludicrous that Vox genuinely didn't know that merely touching Charlie would break the deal with Alastor.
Fucking wordplay? You tricked me with a fucking technicality?
Vox has been an overlord for decades. He's made hundreds, if not thousands of contracts with other souls and should have been well aware of the semantics in this one. Did I think Vox was going to touch Charlie and break the deal? Of fucking course I did. It was obvious he was going to the minute it was pitched. But I was expecting that Vox would corner himself into a position where he had to touch Charlie, or that his mistake would be more out of impulse and he didn't realize until immediately after it happened. I didn't expect him just falling for simple wordplay. It's not even like it was clever or convoluted, it was just him touching Charlie that broke it when Alastor said not to lay his hands on her. Technicalities like these are the kind of shit that's been seen in dozens of shows and movies meant for kids, and yet the villain of this adult animated series fell for it as a trick.
I promised I wouldn't harm a single hair on his head. And
Ow!
this is the one I won't harm. Here, you keep it.
Also, it's pretty lucky that Vox only touched Charlie after the deal between Alastor and Rosie was broken when he was handsy with Charlie immediately when they first met. So like, what would have happened if Vox touched Charlie before she could confirm him as the strongest sinner in hell? Would Vox sense the deal breaking and attack Alastor, or be wary of something going on thus he never becomes the strongest sinner? Vox's eyes didn't flash like how Rosie's did when her deal got broken, so who fucking knows with this shit-ass world building? Rosie's eyes probably only flashed anyway because the writers couldn't figure out how else to get her back into the story. I know that I've been on this for so long in the video now and you're all probably getting sick of me talking about it, but Alastor's scheme concluding here is both a pivotal moment in the story and something that people have been legitimately praising as clever this season. And when you ultimately look over everything, his plan relies on too much luck, too many stupid character decisions, and the writers essentially having to cheat or just not give a fuck about world building in order for him to succeed. I will not commend him for breaking 2 deals at once because the writing had to break in so many other places just for him to do that. Right, well let's finally move on with the episode then. There are several action scenes all happening at once by this point, so I'll just describe each one at a time. Husk and Cherry overpower Valentino and his copyright safe Fizzaroli bot, only for Val to call Angel Dust for help. Angel starts strangling Cherry, but Husk snaps him out of his mind control by punching him. Kind of underwhelming, but whatever, they beat Valentino after doing this. Nifty, with support from Baxter, manages to beat Velvette, and Vox, despite being the strongest sinner in hell now, is getting his absolute shit kicked in by Alastor. I mean, I guess Alastor is just that much more experienced, but it's still pretty fucking boring that these two rivals are finally fighting at max power, yet one just totally dog stomps the other. Vox ends up calling Shockwave over to fight Alastor, and the shark accidentally slaps Vox back to V-Tower, where he gets the idea to use the Might of Lilith to try and kill Alastor for good. Vox in the process kills hundreds of sinners and also destroys much of Pentagram City and Baxter's laptop too. Wait, why did he shoot a single beam at his own tower? Alastor and Shockwave were nowhere over there, and he would have been sweeping the laser like he's been doing the entire time, not firing a single shot? You just wanted Baxter's part of the plan to go to shit without killing him and didn't care how you did it, you fucking hacks. Charlie and Emily start trying to save survivors together, which convinces Carmilla to start helping Vaggie try to stop the weapon. There's honestly some really bizarre editing here, like Vox is meant to be firing the laser this entire time, yet whenever it cuts to Vaggie and Carmilla, he's nowhere to be seen and the weapon is completely still and not firing at all. Yeah, I'm just gonna chalk this up as a lack of communication between the team. Vox is about to shoot Alastor with the weapon, but Emily saves him while getting injured in the process. The Heaven characters have been watching everything transpire, and Penchus, being the last hope to send the broadcast, assures Sarah to have hope herself, so Sarah sends Lute and Abel down just to bring Emily back. Vox's approval goes down drastically from his destruction in trying to kill Alastor, and Carmilla tells him that the weapon will overload and blow up half of Pentagram City if he fires it one more time. Vox, however, doesn't care and is willing to take everyone, including himself, out if it means killing Alastor. But before he can do so, Velvette and Valentino arrive to stop him, and Val rips Vox's head clean off his body. The weapon looks like it's about to blow soon anyway, and Emily uses her remaining strength to try and stop it, leading into the final song of the season, Hear My Hope. There's quite a lot that happens in this song plot-wise, so I'll just go through it all piece by piece. Emily starts shooting some magic piss stream from her hands at the weapon, then Charlie joins in with her own piss stream, and then Husk and Nifty join in with theirs. So I guess the piss stream is just a new ability we've learned about here that angels and demon princesses and overlords, both former and current, can just do. Also, yes, this does confirm that Nifty at least at one point was in fact an overlord, but just like everything else with Nifty, I couldn't really be fucked to care. Lute and Abel come through the portal, even though they went through like 4 minutes before this when Emily got hurt. I guess those things just have major latency. And Lute attempts to intervene and engages Vaggie in a fight. Abel then sings about how he doesn't know what to do in this situation, and he manages to work up the courage to tell Lute to back the fuck off, which she does. Why the fuck did we give her gravity in the second goddamn episode if she wasn't even gonna do shit for the rest of the season? What a goddamn waste of a banger. Lute and Abel then leave through a portal without Emily, thus not even doing the one thing they actually came down here to do. Well, first mission as captain and Abel's already fucking up. Carmilla is inspired by Charlie and company's bravery, and okay, seriously, you cannot convince me that these two aren't fucking, like, come on. And she and Zestiel join in with their own piss streams. More and more overlords join in to try and stop the weapon, with the exception of Alastor, who's watching from the shadows. Rosie finally remembers that she's a character in the show and scolds Alastor for not helping stop the weapon. But Alastor is always one to ask for something in return, and he uses everybody's potential deaths to strong-arm Rosie into a deal. We don't know the specifics for sure, but the deal presumably was that Rosie fixes Alastor's staff in exchange for him helping stop the weapon and returning to work at the hotel. Thus, Rosie and Alastor join in with their own piss streams. So again, if Rosie could just always fix the staff this quickly, then why the fuck was she so anal to do it earlier?
In due time.
Valentino and Velvette, still around, finally join in, as Vox, reduced to a bouncing TV, begs and pleads for everyone to stop. Everybody is able to destroy the weapon, and the song concludes. Oh yeah, and the song was okay, I guess. It was basically just a discount My Little Pony finale. I know one person who might get into the show, though.
So, since we're getting to know each other better, how about we grab some lunch sometime soon? I'll pay, but I need to get a job here in Ponyville first.
So, we're never fucking talking about this shit ever again, right?
Yeah,
no.
Ooh, great idea! Now we can just immediately return to the status quo, and we don't have to address the piss beams in the future in case they could be extremely useful in solving another major problem. Big win for the writers all around and not having to try.
Holy fuck, we did it! The power of friendship is strong within us!
Zestiel commends Carmilla for coming to her senses to trick us into believing she had an arc this season, and Lucifer just comes out of the weapon's remains in a way that's played as a joke.
Don't go down there! It's a place of pain.
So yeah, that's the last interaction Charlie and Lucifer have this season. They never properly reconcile for what happened in episode 5. Did I mention that the next season is apparently supposed to be focused on the Morningstar family? Penchus finally manages to make the broadcast to Hell and reveals to everybody that redemption is in fact possible. He also finds that he's awkwardly late to warning everybody not to go to war with Heaven, and has an interaction with Charlie that just amounts to this.
You look cuter! Heaven looks really good on you.
Figured we would have wanted a more impactful meeting between the two, with how much Penchus missed his friends, and with how Charlie's entire goal is to redeem sinners, but whatever, who even cares about the main character's bonds with everybody else? We've already ruined her enough, and it's the Vox show this season anyway, fuck it! Cherry and Penchus have a lover's quarrel in front of all of Hell. Oh yeah, I guess this is somehow a two-way broadcast. Wait, then if Penchus is doing this all by himself, did they really even need to sneak into V-Tower? I don't fucking care, we're almost done. And the V's comedically retreat back into their tower, still together as a group, despite the fact that Vox tried to nuke half the city, and they've been building up to Val and Vel abandoning or betraying him across multiple episodes this season. Oh yeah, and as for where Shockwave was before this, and after Emily got hit by the laser, and why he didn't try to help finish Alastor off, protect Vox from Valentino, or interfere with everybody stopping the weapon, you know what fucking joke I'm gonna make by now.
Coffee, coffee!
Angel Dust decides to move back in with Val as he's traumatized from being Vox's spy and doesn't want to risk hurting anybody at the hotel anymore, much to Husk and Cherry's dismay. We learn through a final narration over a montage that the hotel is now successful and has good relations with Heaven, and that the V's were able to put a spin on everything to make Valentino look like a hero and serve as the new head of Vox Tech. Oh, and Vaggie just changed her name by removing the E. Why did we even make this a thing for her again? Like, her name is just the exact same, except now the spelling is even closer to the word vagina. Charlie tells all this and more to her mother in another voice message, but when she hangs up, her mom finally calls her for the first time in years, ending the season on a cliffhanger.
Mom?
Yeah, that finale fucking sucked. Even with 10 more minutes than normal, it felt like there was too much going on at once, certain things felt contrived, and the power of friendship resolution was just so fucking embarrassing. It's honestly amazing they made this worse than the season 1 finale. So those were all 8 episodes of Hazbin Hotel Season 2. I don't think they were all terrible, but I also don't think there was really a standout episode of good quality like how Season 1 had Episode 4. I have more to say about the season as a whole, but before getting into that, let's dig into the characters.
And be forced to watch a fox read them the news.
I think it makes perfect sense to start with Vox, since he's undeniably the most important character this season. He's had the most screen time, no pun intended. He's featured in more songs this season than any other character has ever been within a single season. He was heavily prominent in the marketing, and Christian Borle has received more praise for his performance this season than anybody else has. This is Vox's season, and they really did put the most effort into him out of every character. So much effort that even Hazbin's biggest critics and haters admit they actually did like Vox and thought he was the best part of Season 2. And I would actually be inclined to agree with that. Vox is a very charismatic business tycoon whom you believe could actually have gotten into the position he's currently in, and could actually carry himself as a highly influential figure in Hell. His design is also one of the better ones in the Helliverse, consisting of many deep blues to contrast the overabundance of reds, and the animators really did have fun playing around with his TV theme. While he still curses a lot, his comedy and mannerisms still feel unique for most of the other cast due to Borle's deliveries, and his interactions with other characters really stand out as a result. Vox feels like the most human character in the show, always trying to put on the best image possible to whoever he's in front of, while harboring a huge ego and a ton of insecurity. And there are many subtle details and little moments that emphasize his character and even paint him as a foil to Charlie. Vox is simply just fun to watch. But that's about where my praise for Vox ends. Like I said, while Vox is one of the best things about the season, in a way he's simultaneously one of the worst. As I've said earlier, Vox has the most screen time this season, and it's to a point where he basically hogs it. Hazbin Hotel is already a show that doesn't get a whole lot of time to develop its characters. The main cast were undeniably held back by this in Season 1. But now they're trying to take a villain who was merely a footnote in Season 1 and make him a much more fleshed out antagonist in Season 2. So a lot of their work with the character ultimately still needs to be done. Thus, in giving more time to the villain while still trying to balance all the time they have between the characters introduced in Season 1 and more, they take away even more time from our heroes when they were already rather starved initially. But you know, Vox has taken so much time out of the season, he's at least a pretty stellar villain, right?
No.
Yeah, so as much as I was entertained by Vox, as better as he was than every other character this season, and for as much shit as I'm probably going to be catching for this section, the quality of character writing in the Helliverse is a very low bar to pass over, and I think they ultimately fumbled him in several areas to the point where I can't really find myself saying that he was worth all the damage dealt to everybody else. I know I've already said this before, but Vox's success this season really did rely largely on other characters not making very good decisions. When you've killed your Archangel main villain from the first season, and when multiple angels are now on the good guy's side at the beginning of Season 2, it can be a real challenge to make a mere overlord feel like a legitimate threat. But rather than figuring out a way to buff Vox in a reasonable manner, the writer's solution was to just put the good guys at the lowest difficulty setting in order to trick you into thinking that Vox is more dangerous than he really is. Vox is meant to be more a villain of cunning and manipulation, being a media overlord, but his cunning and manipulation don't feel all that impressive when his opposition are a bunch of smooth-brained koalas. And Vox's own ability to scheme is further called into question when looking over several aspects of his plan. While Vox clearly intends actually going up to heaven, the writers sort of just avoid answering how he'll actually physically arrive in heaven and hope you don't question it, as evidenced by them lampshading it with Valentino's question being treated as a joke. Also, the fact that Vox can just hypnotize tons of people at once kind of just undermines him needing to be a master of persuasion. Like, what's the point in even leveling up your speech if you can just force people to listen to you anyway? In fact, I'm not really sure what Vox's plan to take over heaven even was before Alastor turned himself over to him. Attacking the hotel didn't really seem to accomplish all that much for him compared to Alastor's surrender getting almost every other overlord in hell on his side, and he never even planned to fight Alastor in the first place. Vox's progress ultimately just felt like a result of luck and everyone playing the game with broken controllers, and it really does hurt his image as a villain. I also wasn't really the biggest fan of Vox's dynamic with Alastor this season. I understand that Alastor is meant to emphasize Vox's weaknesses of insecurity and ego, and I actually do like how in episode 7 he's able to influence Vox's behavior to Velvette without saying a word, and how Charlie's answer to Vox in episode 3 subtly comes back to make him invite her to the party.
I believe anyone can be redeemed.
There's nothing you could do to break that girl's spirit.
You have no idea what I'm capable of.
However, and I understand that this is much more of a personal preference than a legitimate flaw, I would have liked to have seen Alastor having to try much harder to crack Vox's shell. Vox just folds so easily to Alastor's mind games while he simply just repeats the same points about how Vox relies on others over and over again. It's on the level of playground insult, and it makes it even harder to take Vox seriously as a villain, especially when the character is getting rage-baited by his fucking overhyped dog shit, but we'll get into why Alastor sucks later. I mean, sure, Vox was shown to be childish about Alastor in Season 1 and even crashed out against him and stayed gone, but Alastor had been gone for 7 years and Vox was caught on the spot by him during his broadcast. There were still plenty of things that made me believe the relationship wasn't so one-sided. Vox asking Alastor to join his team was assumed by almost everybody at the time to be him going for a power play. The reason Vox has for spying on the hotel in Season 1 is to figure out if Alastor made a deal with Charlie, implying that he knows the Radio Demon's game and how he operates.
So our main concern now is ensuring that no deal is ever struck between Lucifer's brat and that smiling freak.
And Valentino at the beginning of Stayed Gone mentions Alastor almost beating Vox one time, implying that Vox has actually won against Alastor before.
You still pissed he almost beat you that time?
Fuck you!
Just saying.
Alastor was still clearly propped up as the better of the two, but Season 1 was making me feel that Alastor and Vox were still a lot closer when competing with one another. Yet Season 2 establishes that Vox is practically just always this emotionally unstable around Alastor. I know that Vox is intended to be petty, but this is just too petty to the point where I just roll my eyes at many of their scenes. Like, I would have just preferred that Vox's flaws just didn't stem almost entirely from one man turning down his high school prom invitation years ago. There are many who think that Vox is a fairly complex character, and there are others who think that he's all over the place to the point where he's lame. I consider myself being in the center of this, acknowledging the good parts about Vox this season, but also still being able to see where the other camp is coming from. In Season 1, Vox was upset that Adam didn't finish off Alastor. He came off as wanting Alastor dead or out of the way, even if he himself wasn't the one to deal the killing blow. Yet in Season 2, when Vox has the chance to beat Alastor himself, he accepts a deal to keep him alive despite knowing he's a deadly deal maker and is desperate to impress him. I would dare say that the Vox in Season 1 feels like a character with different motivations from the Vox in Season 2. I would even argue that in the Mirror song we had with Vincent Whitman that he feels like a different character from Vox. He was willing to kill his way up to the top in life, yet at some point in the afterlife he developed a crush on someone whom he would normally see as just another opponent to try and dispose of. There's a noticeable gap in between Vincent and the earliest we see Vox at that makes him feel like a bit of an incomplete character. And having the rejection be the only piece of Vox and Alastor's history we see makes Vox look like too much of a fucking lolcow.
I am going to shove your ass down your throat and make you eat your underwear!
I would ultimately say that my main issue with Vox this season is that it's difficult to tell whether or not the show even wants me to take him seriously as a villain at all. His opposition came off as so incompetent that I couldn't really find his success throughout the season very impressive, nor could I even wish for his downfall to come or for the inept main characters to best him in the end. They go out of their way to make Vox look like a force of nature that can stand up to angels and lead an uprising that frightens even heaven, yet even after trying to incite a war, imprisoning his realm's leader and destroying a good chunk of Pentagram City, he's still alive by the end and goes out of the season like a Saturday morning cartoon villain where he can just come back in future episodes. I'm not even saying that Vox can't simultaneously be funny and threatening. Boral's line deliveries are probably the main reason I even like him in this show. But for fuck's sake, the punishment here does not fit the crime. Vox may be the best character in Hazbin Hotel, but it's mostly by default. While he was a decently fun character, I can't really imagine myself comparing him to great villains in other media, and I honestly think he would have been much more effective as a villain protagonist of his own show rather than being stuck as an antagonist in this one. And seeing as how he's still the best character this season, it only goes downhill from here.
Now can I have my own show, Peter?
Quagmire, you're a
Valentino is a rather interesting character to discuss, given his reputation amongst the fandom. He's heavily reviled by the fan base for the things he puts Angel Dust through on a regular basis, and we're forced to see the severe effect it has on Angel in Season 1. Though I think the character being so hated speaks a great volume of how good a job they actually did at making him an antagonist to Angel Dust. Unlike Stella and Hell of a Boss, Valentino succeeded as an abusive character in Season 1 because he actually felt human. Like someone you can meet in real life, and who many people that connect with Angel Dust have been unfortunate to meet in real life. He was portrayed as a narcissist who's willing to act however he needs to in order to get what he wants out of people, and is even shown to have much healthier relationships with other characters whom he respects on the same level as himself. They do try to humanize Val more in Season 2, though I'm disappointed with how they handled it as a whole. Valentino barely interacts with Angel Dust this season, which means that most of his interactions are with his fellow Vs, primarily Vox, whom he's already established to have a fling with. This season was a good opportunity to flesh out the V's relationships a bit more and maybe even go into their history with one another, but I don't think they really did a lot of that. In fact, it's kind of hard to even gauge how much Val and Vel do for the plan or even the business as a whole, since Vox is both just more vital to the plan and more prominent overall than either of them. So many people are already established to watch TV in this world, and there's only one real instance in Season 2 where sinners are actually shown to be using social media. A lot of Valentino's purpose this season just feels like comedic relief. And while it does humanize Val, and while I did find plenty of his jokes funny, props to Joel Perez for his line deliveries, I think it's a bit of a strange direction to take the character given his depiction in Season 1. The fandom already loathes Valentino for the terrible things he puts Angel Dust through, and now he's being presented as someone we're supposed to laugh at in Season 2 to the point where a montage of him hitting his victim is meant to be something funny. I mean, at this rate, we'll probably see something like this next season. The show also has moments where it seems to want us to feel sorry for Valentino, since Vox's plan and fixation on Alastor are ruining their relationship. But, like, it's kind of hard to feel sorry for him when we know what he's done to Angel already. Like, you already blew your load with Val's abuse. It's gonna take a lot more than Vox and Alastor's toxic yaoi to get me to feel much sympathy for him. Val never even really tries to pull Vox aside to have a serious talk or heart-to-heart with him about the plan or about Alastor to bring him to his senses. The closest we really get to that is this.
This whole thing, it's getting old fast, Vox.
And even after a whole season hinting that Val would turn on Vox, he only did it when he was going to die and still stayed by Vox's side in the end, merely wanting to give him the silent treatment. Like I said, I'm not against humanizing an evil character like Val, but I'm not really a fan of the way they did it this season, and I think a lot of it stems from the V's feeling less like a trio and more like Vox and his two minions. Also, this isn't really a criticism of the show, but it's a bit weird that the official social media accounts for Hazbin are making thirst trap posts and cutesy how to draw tutorials for a character who's been portrayed as a horrific abuser. Not insinuating anything about any real people, just comes off as bizarre to me.
I'm going to the sort-off.
Velvette is the third of the V's. They give her a witch motif this season, for some reason, and it's also made more clear that she's a mannequin, which fits in with the fashion designer thing. She's British. She uses a phone, I guess. Yeah, that's all I got. She's a female Helliverse villain. What the fuck did you honestly expect? I'm taking this Velvette any day over her.
No mercy! You thought I'd stop there? Annihilated?
When I say bum, 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 when I say bum.
I'm going to be blunt and say that even in Season 1, I didn't really care for Alastor as a character. I wasn't quite able to put my finger on why at first, but this season and the discourse that came with it has finally made me realize why this fan-favorite character is far from being my own favorite. Alastor was a bit of a screen hog in Season 1, though not to the extent of Vox in Season 2. Unlike the rest of the hotel crew, much of his time in the spotlight saw him by himself or with other characters who helped prop him up. The first half of Episode 2 was spent building up a villain who's immediately humiliated by him. It was very clear in Episode 3 that the subplot where he went to the Overlord meeting was the part the episode actually cared about, even if the focus eventually shifted over to Carmilla. Episode 5, which should have been dedicated to fleshing out the relationship between Charlie and Lucifer, saw one of the songs be a pissing contest between Alastor and Lucifer, and a good remainder of the episode was then hijacked by an annoying fat bitch who only exists as set dressing for Alastor and to regurgitate his backstory. And Episode 7 and introduces yet another character who's a friend of Alastor's and who even got the episode named after her. Yet despite all this, Alastor doesn't really do a whole lot in Season 1. Every other character always hypes him up as this ultra-powerful demon who you don't want to fuck with, yet his only real contributions to the plot are finding out that Carmilla killed an angel, relaying this to Charlie, and introducing Charlie to Rosie for reinforcements. And I guess also indirectly being the reason Penchus was even staying at the hotel in the first place, if you really want to be generous. While you could argue that he was only able to make these contributions due to his status of being a powerful overlord, he's not really using the power everyone is always shitting their pants over him having. Alastor mostly used his powers in Season 1 to beat up weak jobber demons, and the one time he actually fought a strong opponent, that being Adam, he was nearly killed and retreated for the rest of the episode. Alastor's power isn't really shown as much as it is told to the audience. He's a character who feels relatively easy to write in the sense that you never really have to write a lot for him in the moments. The intrigue with him is almost always about what he will do and what he could do, but rarely about what he's currently doing. Just have characters talk about how great he is or get flustered by him, drop a couple lore crumbs that may or may not lead somewhere down the road, and have him make the exact same spooky face over and over and over again, and people will just eat him up. Despite being more important to the plot, it somehow feels like Alastor does even less in Season 2. He practically does nothing for the first 3 episodes. The 4th episode reveals Rosie as his captor, and he lets Vox tie him up in a chair for some master plan we expect to see unfold by the finale. And after spending almost half the season in the chair shitting on Vox, he finally has his moment to shine where he breaks free of 2 deals at once, curb stomps Vox in an actual fight, and gets Rosie to fix his staff. I've already gone over why Alastor's plan was rubbish and shouldn't have played out in his favor the way that it did. And while you could argue that Alastor beating Vox in his prime has finally given him a victory over a strong foe, considering how badly Vox's mentality tanks whenever the radio demon opens his mouth, I don't know if I can take his victory very seriously. Also, Shockwave being thrown into the mix does muddy the power scaling a little bit, even if a laser was firing on Alastor at the same time. Between each of the Vs in the mid-season fight, Rosie for the second half of the season, and Shockwave in the finale, up to 5 different characters this season all walked off set for coffee breaks so that Alastor could do what he did and wouldn't be absolutely pulverized. 5 different characters had to be removed from existence for his own sake. Do you understand how pathetic that is for your strongest sinner in hell? And sure, you could argue he threw the fight with the Vs, but if they all actually ganged up on him at once, he may not even have stood up long enough to make his deal with Vox at all. Many people have called Alastor a fraud this season for failing to competently show his power level. And as I've been making this video, even more people have been pointing out how Alastor is a hypocrite who does many of the same things he calls out Vox for doing. Though whether or not that's the point, since Vox wouldn't know that, or the writers just forgot that Alastor does these things, is rather difficult to tell given their track record. But I also believe that Alastor is a fraud in a unique sense outside of those things. He barely interacts with the rest of the hotel crew despite working there, only exchanging dialogue with Charlie once this entire season. His pissing contests with Lucifer and Vox are nowhere near as funny as the show thinks they are. Adam lets him live in Season 1 for pretty much no reason when he severely punishes his subordinates for sparing sinners. He's constantly shown being pretty easy to irritate, despite saying that his smile always keeps his foes guessing. It's doubly cringeworthy when he swears compared to everybody else in the show.
I'm about to end your fucking life.
And his aesthetics make him stand out from the rest of the cast, but in a bad way. I know it's already been said before by others, but Alastor truly is just a mess of motifs. He's a radio host, but also a deer, but also a deal maker, but also he practices voodoo, but also his shadow is alive, though maybe that is also a voodoo thing. And his powers in combat mostly consist of black tendrils and summoning these little minions. At this point, it mostly is just the voice filter carrying the radio theme for him. He doesn't even really have a standout ability regarding sound. Like, how the fuck do you give voice mimicry to the TV demon instead? The point I'm trying to make with all this is that Alastor by now feels much less like a character who's a part of the main cast, or even really a part of the world, and more like an OC from a fanfiction of the show written by a teenager who somehow broke containment and hijacked the actual project. And there actually is a bit of truth to that statement when you realize that Alastor was one of the first characters Vivziepop ever created when she was a teenager, and the first character created for Hazbin Hotel. Viv has a very bad habit of clinging too strongly to her darlings. Many of her character stories have likely been locked in for years even before the show was made, and even a character as inconsequential as Mimsy she was too stubborn to cut from Season 1, which also ended up ruining the episode she appeared in. Viv may say that Vox is her favorite character at the moment, but you can just tell that Alastor is her favorite of all time, and that him being one of her first characters ever is pretty much never going to let anybody else she creates ever truly topple him from that placement.
Look, we got the freaky red guy that everyone's into!
The show is constantly begging you to think that Alastor is the greatest character ever. Everybody else in universe always gasses him up, he regularly rage baits the King of Hell and the main antagonist of this season, we always have to dedicate some time to slowly unraveling the many mystery boxes he possesses, and he was pretty much the only character this season who was allowed to have any brain cells. Everybody else was knocked down a peg this season so that Vox could succeed, and Vox was only allowed to succeed this season also that Alastor could have his all according to Keikaku moment and tear Vox back down. Because at the end of the day, Alastor is the apple of Vivzy Pop's eye, her favorite child, her special baby, her prized pet. It doesn't matter what this red, shit-eating grinned edgelord does, because Vivian Medrano will bend her own world and ruin 1,000 other characters before she lets you place him anywhere below your top 5.
Spiders! Punch them!
Angel Dust was a rather disappointing character this season, especially since he was undoubtedly one of the strongest in the first season. His conflict with Valentino was well established, and he had a decent start in character progression in the season's first half. Though he did admittedly become less relevant in the second half of the season, as the only major contribution he gave was serving as an example of redemption for the angels up in heaven. And I also don't think that what they did with him there was exactly earned, since Season 1 skipped months worth of time in between episodes. Regardless of that, Season 1 Episode 4 still stands as the best episode of the series, not just because of how it handles themes of SA, but because it utilizes the main cast the best out of any episode. There are no other subplots focusing on any other characters outside the hotel, and outside of Valentino, it's really only members of the main cast who appear in the episode. The only member completely absent is Alastor, but like I said, he barely even feels like he's a part of the main cast anymore. Angel Dust has thoroughly explored this episode and experiences significant growth. Husk is the one to steer him on the right path, and we even get to learn more about his life. And Charlie is someone who makes Angel's situation worsen trying to help him and learns a lesson about boundaries by the end. I think that this episode is more of what people were expecting the show being like all those years ago when the pilot first dropped. Actually focusing on the small to medium-sized cast of characters in this hotel and seeing how they progress towards the goal of redemption. I would dare say that Angel Dust is the spirit for the intended premise of the show and that he almost serves as a barometer for its quality. He's at his strongest when the focus is redemption, but as the focus shifts to the exterminations and the conflict between heaven and hell, he becomes less relevant and more of a background character. Which brings us to Angel Dust in Season 2, or the lack thereof. Angel doesn't really get to do anything until Episode 3, where Husk and Charlie get him to try and prove redemption possible in front of his own abusive boss's business partners. It goes badly, of course, and Vox tortures Angel even further by bringing up his sin and mentioning Valentino. While this is technically focused on redemption and Angel is in the spotlight, this whole episode is just far below the quality of Masquerade from Season 1, as Angel is just needlessly suffering. Angel has an argument with Husk and is upset with Charlie, but he seems to get over everything with Husk between episodes and doesn't even interact with Charlie for the rest of the season. The next time Angel is prominent is Episode 6, when he sings Losing Streak, then talks to Husk again, though this doesn't really go anywhere, as shortly after, in the same episode, the plot twist of him being a spy is dropped and he's graphically tortured, this time by Vox. There are people who have gone through similar situations Angel has gone through who like Poison from Season 1 and who think it's a good representation of their own experiences. There are also people who have gone through similar situations who don't like Poison or how graphic it is. I've been fortunate enough to have never been involved in SA or even grooming delving into that nature in my life, whether it be as a victim, perpetrator, or even as a witness close by. So I'm especially in no position to tell either party how to feel, even if I agree with the pro-Poison people that the sequence is effective. This scene of Vox torturing Angel, however, doesn't really warrant me being as nuanced. It just feels like it's here because they didn't know what to do with the character this season and thought doing the same thing from Season 1 would evoke the same response again. But it just comes off as cheap shock value, especially when the twist with Angel being a spy was so poorly telegraphed. Though my personal belief is that this scene is also here to make sure that the audience sides against Vox before the finale in case all the screen time was making people like him too much. Angel for the rest of the season is reduced to a low-stakes objective in the finale for Husk and Cherry to go fetch. He doesn't even get a verse in When I Think About the Future when fucking Lucifer did, fastened to a giant gun, and he's so unimportant by this point that the writers even forgot to add in the scene where his friends found out he was being brainwashed. And after they went through the trouble to save him, he just decides to go back into V Tower and leave the hotel.
You do have a choice.
I didn't when I had my hands around your neck, and I don't now.
This line convinces me that there is a good story somewhere in there. There are ideas for Angel Dust that can be executed really well. But as the show drifts farther and farther away from slice-of-life scenarios in a hotel to big war epics, it clearly becomes harder and harder for the writers to figure out how to implement him into anything. Angel will apparently become a major focus in Season 3, so maybe he'll actually have some good stuff again. But outside of one fun song this season, he was effectively just a punching bag meant to suffer whenever he was focused on.
No king, la 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 la.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. Lucifer was just total fucking garbage this season. It's very clear at this point that they're struggling to write the story around him, as he's essentially one of the most powerful creatures in this universe who's also the father of the main character and will thus always align with her. There are very vague, questionable laws in place that prevent him from stopping Vox when he's declaring war on behalf of his own kingdom that he rules, and they have to make him so absent-minded as to walk into a very obvious trap so that he can power the might of Lilith and thus not be able to stop it with portals or any other powers at his disposal. I'm convinced by this point that the show is intentionally trying to show Lucifer performing as few royal duties as possible so that they don't have to write around him nearly as much as they do already. He's mostly a shut-in playing with ducks, he doesn't know anything about his own subjects, he doesn't even watch the news, except when he apparently does so that he can call Vox a narcissist. He sends Charlie to meet with Adam back in Season 1, and even when he arranged the meeting with Heaven in Season 1, he did it off-screen. By this point, the King of Hell feels like a less defined title than an overlord. What exactly can he do, and what can't he do? Can sinners be kept in check in any way? Does he even rule over these people at all, or do they just revere him as a king out of fear since he's the strongest thing down here? I really just don't have much else to say about Lucifer. Compared to Season 1, he felt like much less of a character and more like a plot device. He barely even had a minute's worth of singing this season, that's how pathetic he was. Vaggie is still pretty mediocre this season, and she more or less is still stuck with the identity of being Charlie's girlfriend. All of Hell should now know she's a fallen angel, a being that has slaughtered their own kind, yet no one seems to care and the writers never actually seem to do anything with it. Thinking the next best place to take her character instead is just giving herself a slight name change. Also, Vaggie's singing voice still sounds absolutely nothing like her speaking voice.
And it's hard sometimes to feel like you aren't hearing me.
When I think about the future, I see my favorite face.
I'm not saying Stephanie Beatriz can't sing, she obviously can, but she's the only person not singing as the character she's playing in the show, and it's incredibly distracting. Husk is still one of the better characters in the show, and even if I think the drama between him and Angel this season felt rather rushed, seeing him in combat was certainly entertaining, and you can tell that Keith David is still having fun playing the character. Serpentis wasn't really in this season very much, but I would still say that I liked him for the most part. While I think he could have had a better backstory, and while I desired more from his interaction with Charlie, I still enjoyed his interactions with the Angels, and the moments he had with them did actually feel meaningful. I don't care about his forced romance with Cherry Bomb though, nor do I really care about Cherry Bomb either. In addition to being Angel Dust's friend, she essentially exists just to be a supporting character to two different male characters, and it's obvious the show is just kind of stuck with her scratching its head at what to do. Nifty still exists. I still have no strong opinions on her one way or another. Baxter is a walking Chekhov's gun and not an actual character. Sarah was okay this season, even if I wish she didn't turn as early as she did and was a bit less of a worrywart throughout. Also, her being as ancient as she is, she really was a fucking idiot with how she handled the rally Vox was putting on.
How about I take my motherfucking goddamn covenant, chase you down in the middle of the motherfucking...
Emily is a pretty static character, but she's honestly probably the best character behind Vox this season. She's pretty much just a better version of Charlie in every single way. And not just in areas regarding writing, like god fucking damn, I was not familiar with her game before that. Abel hardly qualifies as a character, and if the lead singer of Fall Out Boy didn't voice him, people would care as little about him as he seems to care about his dad being dead. I will say that his section was still the best part of Hear My Hope though. St. Peter is back from the first season. He did a little spin, I guess, I don't know. The Speaker of God was a surprisingly mature depiction of God by Vivzy Pop, though she's only really introduced this season to get Sarah on the other team before dipping. Lute had one of the best songs of the season, only to do fuck all for the rest of it. Like, I don't even know why they had her go down with the other angels to the rally when they didn't even use her as an excuse to spark conflict, and her biggest purpose this season was just to prop up a last-minute arc for Fall Out Boy. Adam is a hallucination, so I don't think he really counts. Honestly, I don't think Lilith should count either, since she did nothing after being a big teaser at the end of Season 1 and is just being teased again. Rosie wasn't allowed to be a character for half the season just so she could lose. Carmela Carmine is still a walking MacGuffin, since everybody apparently just gave her dibs on all the leftover angelic weapons from exterminations for all those years, for some reason. Her two nameless daughters still just exist so that she does stuff for the plot. I don't really have anything to say about Zestiel, other than that I will now be calling his spiderweb in the corner of Carmela's office the Cuckweb. And thus we close the characters portion with who is undoubtedly the worst character of the season. And you should already know who it is, even without process of elimination.
She's a fraud!
dead!
Charlie Morningstar is the worst character of Hazbin Hotel Season 2, and she is quite possibly one of the worst protagonists I have ever seen in anything. I found Charlie in Season 1 to be a rather weak main character, as her methods on redemption were never truly explored or challenged, despite them supposedly being the premise of the show in the first place, and it felt like her own actions and decisions had very little impact on the plot or on the world around her compared to those of other characters. Yet somehow, Season 2 was able to turn Charlie from a nothing burger into an active detriment to the show. Season 1 Charlie was happy to have any guests at the hotel at all and was even eager to still try and redeem Penchus after discovering he was there for nefarious purposes at first. Despite the fact that there are just people walking all around the hotel now in Season 2, which should be a big deal to her and give her something to do, Charlie spends much of the first half of the season worrying over Vox's smear campaign on her, when she had never been this obsessive of her reputation in Season 1 where she only had 2 entire guests. I understand that there's dialogue explaining that Charlie is letting Vaggie do more in her place so that she can get her feelings in order, but this doesn't really work as a sufficient excuse for her just neglecting the guests, especially when she just frantically works to improve the hotel's reputation against Vox anyway. While Charlie did try to advertise the hotel in the past in ways that didn't fetch the best results either, her approaches were at least fairly reasonable given the circumstances, and you could tell that she genuinely did want to keep everybody's best interests in mind. Yet in Season 2, she's willing to pressure someone who's supposedly her own friend into putting on a show for his abuser's colleagues, whom she invited to come in person, despite not even knowing for sure how to redeem someone, and her friend very obviously being uncomfortable with it. I understand that Charlie is supposed to be a naive character, but there's a fine line between being naive and being so selfishly stupid to the point where you undo character growth learning about the same supposed friend's boundaries from the prior season. Charlie also brings Nifty of all fucking people on the news to talk about the hotel for some godforsaken reason, and her brilliant idea of getting the angels to apologize for genocide with gift baskets helped Vox far more than Lucifer being there did, despite her lashing out at her dad in the same episode for his own actions. This also leads to her having an argument with Vaggie, and yet after several minutes of screen time being pissy at her, she's just okay with her again one scene later and they fuck. While Charlie wanting her mom's approval isn't inherently a bad thing, the fact that she's talked more about Lilith this season than she has actually tried to help any of the new hotel guests has led to many thinking she's just a nepo baby who cares more about her own self-fulfillment than she does about the people she's supposed to be helping. The damage to Charlie is actually so bad this season that episode 7 has a joke about her not knowing who a recurring background character is because she hasn't been engaging with the guests at all, when Charlie of all people in the past would have been the one to ask him his name upon arriving at the hotel.
Wait, who are you? That's Rooster. He's been here the whole time. You know what? I'll introduce you later.
And I personally can't even be fucked to care about Lilith or her calling Charlie at the end of this season, since she's barely been a character across the show's run at this point. And you know, since Charlie never even bothered to properly reconcile with the parent who's actually been there for her on screen, or even seemed to give a shit that Vox was using him as a living battery for the equivalent of a nuclear weapon. Hell, as much as she audibly worries about Alastor getting captured all season, Charlie doesn't seem to give much of a fuck at all when he's bleeding out on the ground. She only acknowledges Angel Dust leaving the hotel and going to stay with his abusive boss in an expository narration to her mom over the phone at the end. She even fucking smiled at Valentino during the My Little Pony climax. Like, bitch, that man is enslaving your fucking friend and doing unspeakable things to him. What the fuck? It really is just so hysterical that Vivzipop says she based Charlie this season off of herself, and yet almost everybody fucking hated Charlie this season. I'm also surprised that Charlie's even based off of Vivzipop at all, since it feels like she's among the characters that Viv cares the least about. Charlie had so many bad moments this season, yet no real moments where she shined to make up for them. Even fucking Emily upstaged her in the finale by being the one to actually save Alastor and start the erasure of the weapon. Meanwhile, Charlie's biggest contribution to the finale was freeing a man so that he could fight another man, and that wasn't even by her own fucking choice. And at least in Season 1, she got to do some cool shit in her Archdemon form. She never even transforms once this season. How the fuck does your main character get even less fight scenes as the series goes on? Vivzipop is never going to beat the allegations that she can't write women. She very clearly doesn't want to write women. She just wants to write men having sex. Anything Charlie gets at all feels like it's given her out of obligation, like they had to give her things because they made her the main character. Charlie is the worst character in Season 2, not just because she still feels empty, but because she still feels empty, and yet they were somehow able to make her regress in what little she had. Her actions actually made things worse this time around, and she has yet again gone an entire season without her methods of redemption truly being explored or challenged. She is, without a shadow of a doubt, the modern Peter Griffin of the Helliverse.
Writers, if you try to make your main character that hateable and stupid in an unfunny way, then that's a really big problem.
How can you have bags? You just found out this is a hotel.
This is a hotel?
Many people, including those who don't like Hazbin Hotel, have said that Season 2 felt like an improvement over Season 1, a step in the right direction, even if it's not perfect. Yet after all we've been through, what even ultimately happened this season? What changed about this world? The hotel is now more popular, though that seemed to be the case at the start of the season for a brief time. The hotel and Heaven are now on good terms, though Sarah seemed pretty on board with the concept of redemption by the beginning of the season regardless. Alastor's staff is fixed and he's off his leash, though he's still at the hotel anyway. Valentino is now the head of Vox Tech, but the V still have power and are still together. Vox is currently just ahead, yet he's still alive and will seemingly receive no other punishment for his actions this season. Visipop has also confirmed that she has more in store for Vox, which I'm not really sure what you can even do with him at this point after you've made him the main antagonist for a season, outside of redeeming him, which I'm not confident they would actually earn. Baxter is now at the hotel, Angel Dust is no longer at the hotel because I guess we need him to not be there for season 3, Emily has a metal wing, and that's really it. Nobody died, nobody got redeemed, no war was started, and as we get more seasons of the show, everything with Vox's plan will ultimately just feel like filler. With the characters having been able to stop Vox much earlier, it feels like nothing really happened for most of Season 2. I mean, Season 1 was still bad, don't get me wrong, it still had a lot of the same issues Season 2 has, but at least stuff actually happened, even if it was going by too fast. At least it actually focused on the main characters. At least it tried to act like it cared about the concept of a hotel redeeming sinners. At least there was one episode I can say was actually good. I'm pretty confident in saying that at least in terms of writing, Hazbin Hotel Season 2 is worse than Hazbin Hotel Season 1 and even Hell of a Boss Season 2. I understand that there are many people who will disagree with that and say Hell of a Boss Season 2 is still worse. And while that show has gotten pretty bad and has strayed fairly far from its initial premise of demon hitmen killing people on Earth towards Stolas and Blitz's relationship, at least the Hell of a Boss himself is still a prominent part of the show. The Hazbin Hotel might actually be one of the single least important elements of Hazbin Hotel. Even when there are shown to be more than 2 guests actually staying at this damn place, the show still wants to focus more on war and politics between heaven and hell. Honestly, I'm at the point where I think the exterminations just shouldn't even have been a thing in this world in the first place. They've only helped us stray farther from what the premise of this show was originally pitched as, and the fact that hell is eternal damnation should already be enough of a motivation for redemption anyway. Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel may have improved in the animation and music, but it's not really improved in the writing at all, and that is where it desperately needed to the most. I genuinely don't see Season 3 getting much worse than this, but if a pattern does continue and Season 3 does end up being worse than Season 2, then I shudder to imagine the animation abomination that will be released upon the world in 2027.
Goddamn, god-awful, adult humor, penis hell!
Right, well, thank you all for listening to me ramble about drawings on a screen. I know it was a lot, and I know it took me quite a while to get this video out, but I really felt like I had a lot to say about this show, and I wanted to make sure I did this review right. Also, with YouTube not being my job, and with how long this video ended up being, I was sort of working on and off on it. Even if you disagree, I hope you at least still found the video entertaining, and please feel free to inform me in the comments if I got anything factually incorrect anywhere. I normally cover other people talking about things, so I'm prepared to be on the receiving end of what I dish out to others. But before I end this video, I'd like to recommend some other creators who have talked about Hazbin Hotel in case you'd like to hear some more perspectives on the show. Manga COMIN has been around a long time and has over 200,000 subscribers, so many of you probably already know him, but I'd like to recommend him regardless. He makes video essays on a variety of subjects, and he's brought up many discussion points that do a good job both scrutinizing and praising the Helliverse. Judgmental Critter has a big review of the season I highly recommend you check out, and even as she was making videos on each episode as the season was releasing, I was finding that my thoughts very much aligned with hers going into them. I've already mentioned Pink King earlier in the video, and he's talked a good deal about the Helliverse and has plenty of videos on season 2 for you to check out as well. Also, he's seen Prehistoric Park, so I find that pretty based. Artiste TB, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, has made several popular videos slamming that stupid owl from Hell of a Boss, and she released her video on season 2 of Hazbin during the making of mine. And last but not least, I'd like to recommend a much newer, lesser known channel, that being Gwen's Den, who has multiple videos on season 2, each focusing on a different character or aspect of it. They bring up a lot of good points, and they also have pretty good taste in Johto starters. And with all that being said, like or dislike the video depending on what you thought of it, share your thoughts in the comments down below, subscribe if you'd like to see more of my content, and have a good day or night.